We ready to go? All right, folks, it is 6:11. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Zach, it's not recording, so we're trying to figure out.
Oh, the camera? Tell me when you're ready. October 6th. What is the wish of the board? Move it written. Second. We have a motion by Jeff, a second by Nate Oxnard. Is there any changes or edits to the minutes as presented? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Looks good. Yeah. Start working, Principal Wheeling?
It is, I'm just making sure I get all of the key players in.
Okay, all right, next up, public comments. As in before, please try to keep your comments to a couple of minutes. If anybody has any comments for us, please come up to the mic. Let us know for the minutes who you are, so we can capture them.
Greg Whitmore, 164 North Road. So, it's my third meeting I've been to in a row. And there's currently one case at DCS. The first case that's been present at any meeting I've come to. And I'm here for the same reason, which is obviously to argue against masks. And it's such an absurd thing when I think about it. The argument is that, we're just keeping the students and staff safe. And how could anybody argue against that at the end of the day? And the reason I'm here is because it's not keeping them safe. It's such an unnecessary and oftentimes a cruel thing to do to children, to mask them. Traditionally, school board meetings have not generated a lot of attention. As you can see, things have changed. This is across the country. Parents are coming to meetings in force across the country because they do not like what is going on. And we're making it very clear, we're making our voices heard. And I was very concerned today to learn that there's going to be discussion tonight for the limitation of public discourse. So I have a 6-year-old with me. I come up first because she's out on a school night. So I get up first to say my part and then I leave and I hope you do the right thing. But you haven't done the right thing yet, so I'll keep coming back, I guess. It'll be my Wednesday night ritual. So I guess my question for you is what's going to make you reverse this mask mandate? There was a plan in place over the summer and it was immediately dropped. Schools across the country dropped it in unison. It was amazing. Just when the school year started, it was a great plan in place. But it was gone, and the logic for that was, I don't understand the logic. I mean, the school board keeps stating, we're looking at the data, we look at the data all the time, we obsess about the data. The data is one right now, one case. Last time it was 0. The previous meeting, it was 0. There's 17 people in Deerfield positive right now. That is a 0.004% positivity rate. 0.004. Rockingham County has the lowest % positive rate in New Hampshire. So I watched the previous meetings when I get home, and I find this level of annoyance, or being annoyed, coming out of members of the school board. They don't want to be listening to me. They don't want to be hearing this every week. But clearly, all these people behind me are here to talk about this, and we want to talk about this, and we're going to talk about it every week until changes are made, because this is affecting us real time, right? The masks are in place to possibly prevent something happening. You're masking healthy children. Never in mankind's history has this been done, to mask healthy people, just in case. Two times, a board member has said, I wish someone would just tell us what to do. We're here telling you what to do. We're giving you opinion, and you can take it or leave it. But if you don't want to hear the public input, step aside. I mean, that's all it comes down to. I don't want to hear annoyance at listening to the people you're supposed to represent. So here's what it comes down to, because I'm out of time. Masking children is absurd. Absolutely absurd. It's not normal. It will never be normalized. It's not useful. These actions are actively harming children. I could come here and talk about studies and this and that, but nobody listens to that anymore. There's too many arguments on both sides of that, and there's no clarity whatsoever. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to voting your conscience, I guess, and what's really best for the children. Across the nation, schools are safe, regardless of masks or no masks. I'm not telling you to tell people to not wear masks. People can wear them all they want. They can have their children wear all they want. Don't tell me to put one on my child, because clearly I'm not comfortable with that. It is not in my child's best interest. My family's health decisions are made by myself and my wife with our child's best interest at heart. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Burville?
Good evening, Kevin Burville, McCarran Road. I actually got a half a dozen things, so I guess I'll have to speak fast. First on the agenda, it's noticed as masks are required, and I would ask that if you can't cite the legal authority for trying to make that a mandate, that it be removed from the agenda. If you can cite a legal citation that gives you the authority to do that, please do. There's nothing worse than an unenforced rule, because it waters all the other ones down, right? And there is no masks are required in this meeting, and I don't believe that you have the authority to mandate that the public have to wear anything other than not being decent when they come to a duly noticed public meeting. So please take care of that. I know that you've received a petition for a special meeting. My reading of the RSA is that it's not optional, that if these people sign the petition and they get the signatures, that you should hold that meeting. And I certainly don't want to see the Deerfield School District having to spend money to defend itself in court for denying the people the right to call that special meeting, right? They've done the things that New Hampshire state law says they need to do to call a special meeting. You should honor that. You should honor that in as quickly and efficiently a manner as you can, right? The people want to be heard, and you should respect that. I'm wondering if anybody has talked to Candy. I see a lot of noticing about expanding this school, but there are potentially other options. And I don't expect an answer. I've asked before and already been told I won't get an answer. But it's going to be hard for people to support what's likely going to be a multi-million-dollar bond to expand a school when people can stand up at the deliberative session and say, did you explore X, Y, and Z as other potential solutions to this problem that would be more cost effective? And if the answer is no, we didn't, you're going to have trouble getting support, right? So you've been requested by multiple people on multiple occasions to make sure you're looking at all potential options, because that's what you said you were going to do when you started the process, but I don't see any evidence of it. So, you know, you're being begged, basically being begged and ignoring it. When I saw the list of policies, boy, I tell you, I got very curious very quick. Thank you, Superintendent Sherman, for your always quick and timely responses. The evaluation of school board, BAR1 and BAR2, individual board member self-evaluation worksheets, these read like push polls from the New Hampshire School Board Association. You're elected officials. Your job is defined in RSA and in ed rules, right? So if you're not 100% sure what your job is and how you're supposed to do it, you should review the legal requirements that you're bound to when you were elected and not rely on some push poll from a lobbying organization in New Hampshire to suggest how you do your job. I would suggest that the board reject both these policies. They're garbage and they're not needed. The public comment and participation at board meetings, BEDH, is an absolutely abysmal policy. When I read this, what I hear is we're trying to tighten the noose around public comment and public participation in their local school boards. I have always said the governing body that should be the most open, the most responsive, and the most transparent is a local school board. Because you have our kids all day, every day, right? If anybody should be responsive to the people that elected them, it should be a school board. To say that there's a paragraph here that you're gonna limit what people can say to things noticed on an agenda or mentioned in a previous meeting and that's it? My Lord. Anybody that supports that ought to hang their head in shame. That is antithetical to the American way. I would strongly encourage you to reject this policy as well. To limit it to 15 minutes, to limit it to 2 or 3 minutes a speaker. It's a garbage policy. It should be rejected. Last but not least, and this is critically important, GBD, Board Employee Communication. This policy, if you adopt this policy, and I believe it's on the third reading, puts a firewall between you and your employees. And it's equally important, it puts a firewall between your employees and you. The superintendent works for the school board. Every teacher, every member of the staff, every janitor, every person that works in the school works for you. They can't be hired without your approval. They can't be fired without your approval. They are your employees. If you make a single person, and I have a very high regards and respect for Superintendent Sherman. She does a fantastic job. She's not going to be superintendent forever. You have no whistleblower authority. So if something's going on and a superintendent wants to groom it, wants to cover it up, wants to not deal with it, and an employee blows the whistle to their boss, their ultimate boss, right? The board. That is in violation of policy if this passes, and they can be terminated. Think about that. That's what this policy does. This policy is a piece of garbage. You should be able, you're in charge of this school to say.
You're running long on time, so.
Well, this is really important. This is a bad policy. This almost locks you out of the school. You need permission, you need to make an appointment. Now, I agree, people can't be waltzing in and out all the time, but you're the school board. You guys are the ultimate boss of this school district. This policy should be rejected. The last two policies I spoke on, these are as bad as the gender-neutral bathroom policy that was floated a couple of years ago that Deerfield was smart enough to never take up and never adopt. These 4 policies should be rejected, absolutely rejected. The last thing I'll say is, by tradition, we are expecting the Deerfield School District budget to the Budget Committee on December 2nd. This is the last meeting in October, and if I'm not mistaken, you have 2 meetings in November. I'm expecting somewhere on the order of a $14 or $15 million budget that you have 2 meetings to go through to present to the Budget Committee, right? Because it's expected then. That's always been the schedule. The schedule hasn't changed. I pray to God we don't have a repeat of what we had, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, where the Deerfield School Board dragged its feet delivering a budget to the Budget Committee. That is not fair to the budget committee, who's also duly elected to go through those budgets. So I would strongly encourage you to schedule some extra meetings and to take the time and due diligence to go through both your default budget and your proposed budget. Thank you.
Additional comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Andy. You were kind of hiding my blank.
Yeah, you know, headed to the outlet and all that good stuff. Andrew Reardon, Raymond Road. I wanted to read the letters from my daughters about the mask policy. The first one's from my youngest daughter. Dear school board, I have a hard time understanding people when they have a mask on. Wearing a mask makes me sad and anxious. Can we please have no masks? Second letter from my oldest daughter. Dear school board, I cannot hear my friends or teachers very well. The masks make my face itchy and distracts me. My Grammy and Grampy are vaccinated and protected. I want masks to be optional because people who need to be safe can be. I want a townwide vote. Thank you, Wilma Reardon and Marilyn Reardon.
Additional comments?
Hi, I'm Bobby Ann. I live on Brown Road. This past August, 3 parents from Bentonville School District in Arkansas filed a lawsuit against their school board, making masks optional for all students and staff in their public school. The United States Supreme Court recognized that school boards have no authority.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting it.
She's sorry about it, so am I. They have no authority to issue face coverings for children. These mandates infringe upon the individual liberties guaranteed to citizens and children's guardians of the United States. Your mask mandates are not based on any authority of the New Hampshire Department of Health, and therefore are unconstitutional. On Wednesday, October 6th, we gave the school board a petition for a special meeting where the town's votes can make masks optional, again, for public schools. Again, we don't want to take away your mask or anything else you're doing to protect yourself or any other person in this school. We're just asking that they're optional for children who are having severe difficulty and can't function and learn with them on their faces. Our petition was signed by 101 Deerfield residents, 86 of which are voters and they're registered in this town. I went to the town hall and counted myself. I saw Jeff Kelly's dad with no mask on in there. I'm glad that he feels safe enough in his town hall to not wear a mask. 3 parents, 3 from Arkansas, made the Supreme Court aware of the unlawful actions of their public school. The parents of Deerfield are not to be silenced any longer. New Hampshire's motto is live free or die. This board is so scared about the end that they're forgetting about our beginning and where we come from. Our children have the right to attend public school unmasked and free. At your last school board meeting, you admitted that your little Matrix website was down for 3 days. Your science is unreliable and it lacks common sense. DCS had 0 cases the day the board mandated masks in the first place, just like our neighbor just said. Even after more than half the school, and trust me, I was there multiple days checking out all the kids and families, more than half of our school did not have masks on at our Deerfield Fair. More than half. Not to mention all of the wrestling and physical activity. I've been on to many field trips recently with different classes and seeing the kids physically wrestling on the ground with no masks on, and the constant high fives that they give at our daughter's volleyball practices, constant high fives and touching each other, unmasked. And there were 0 cases this morning. Conveniently, there was one later today, mentioned. So, again, your science is flawed, completely flawed, with all the children not masked, all around our neighborhood and living in their daily lives. We will not back down. Your mandate is a joke, and my children will not be subject to your abuse any longer. Thank you.
Any additional comments?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Crotto of 3 Line Road. So I'm standing here tonight just not on behalf of myself and my family, but on behalf of parents that could not be here for this meeting. Whether it be because they're shuffling their kids around to sports, or cooking dinner and getting their kids ready for bed, or because they're afraid to voice their opinion in a public forum such as this and face the potential backlash of doing so. I'll start by saying my position is simple. I'm not anti-mask. Any person who feels more comfortable wearing one, by all means, do what is best for you and your family. I am, however, anti-mandate, especially on our children. During the last school board meeting, there was a lot of conversation about community. Right now, our community is more divided than it has ever been before. There's no doubt about that. But what are we doing to fix it? The school system is supposed to be the heart of our community. It's what brings all the families in town together and builds lasting relationships between not only the children, but the parents as well. If we continue to keep these mandates in place without scientific evidence that justifies how a scrap of fabric is going to protect our kids against COVID, we're only going to continue to become more divided. We should be finding ways to bring our community back together and try to salvage any sense of normalcy we can, not sitting around a table pretending we know what's best for each person or family individually. We gave you the 2 weeks following the fair that you had requested. As of this afternoon, on the interactive map of the state of New Hampshire, there were 17 active cases in the town of Deerfield, none of which were within the school system. Now it is showing 1. No one sitting in this room is a doctor, epidemiologist, or scientist, so please, let's stop pretending that we are. As a school board, I'd recommend that efforts are instead focused on finding alternative options for our kids going into high school that are closer to home, addressing the DCS feasibility study and the much needed updates that can be made to our school, and finding solutions for that less than stellar Common Core curriculum. As a parent, I'll be the one who focuses my efforts on the health and well-being of my child. I do not co-parent with the school system, and anyone else for that matter that isn't listed on my child's birth certificate. And it is, in my opinion, inappropriate for anyone outside of my household to put their beliefs and ideologies onto my child. I fight with my child every single day about wearing a mask. The question is always, why do I have to wear this thing? And my answer is because the school says you have to. But here's my problem with that. I personally do not feel that he should have to wear a mask for an entire school day. He's a healthy 8-year-old with a mask mandate in place. I'm now washing masks every day because his comes home soaked through with sweat, spit, and Lord knows what else. So how is that a healthier alternative for my child? For any of our children, really? As you may already be aware, according to federal data that was released this summer, across the United States, K-12 enrollment saw a drop of 1.5 million students between the 2019 and 2020 and 2020 and 2021 school years. In New Hampshire alone, this resulted in a 4 to 6% decrease in enrollments. As these mandates continue on, I imagine that you will continue to see a decrease in enrollments in the coming years as parents seek alternative options that allow their children more basic freedoms in and out of the classroom, whether that be through private schools, charter schools, or homeschooling, which reportedly had double the enrollment during this past school year. This is just something to keep in mind as it relates to district funding and the like. And so I'll end with this. My child's in 3rd grade right now. The last fully normal school year that he had was kindergarten. Think about that for a minute. These silly mandates and restrictions that give you a false sense of safety have completely altered what our children see as normal. Some of them had never even experienced what normal was. I'll end by saying this community deserves better, the parents deserve better, and most importantly, our children deserve better. The school system can do better. Thank you.
I'm gonna pause for 1 second because I believe the generator kicked on. Can we make sure the front door's still unlocked and that didn't reset itself? I wanna make sure it's still
Did it just go?
I'm just gonna pause for a second, folks. I need to make sure the building's still open. Just gonna take a quick recess. So, folks, if anybody wants to continue with the public comments, we have to ensure the building's open, obviously, during the public meeting. But if anybody else would like to continue with public comments, that's okay. The board won't conduct any additional business until we verify that the building's open, but public comments, you're more than welcome if there's anybody else that has a comment.
Is the video still going?
We gotta check that when she comes
We
back.
have to check that. Kristen's the one that knows how to drive that gizmo. So if you guys want to wait a minute, that's fine, but I don't want to hold anybody up any longer than we need to. All right.
It was still going.
I think we're still. That is an idea. That was good. Oh.
I know this is
I just texted home.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay.
So, the camera is still working, we know that, so if anybody would like to continue with public comments, please come forward. If not, we're gonna move on. Sir?
Tim Old J, Mountain Road. I don't speak nearly as well as that, but I'm here to say that it seems we've lost our way. There's a few select members that seem to be filled with way too much fear to be dictating the decisions for my children in this school. If that continues, I'm going to ask that you step aside and maybe let the position be filled with somebody who's not so fearful of the what ifs. My kids need a choice. I need a choice. This is America. You're way overstepping, what you were put in place to do. I think the Common Core is trash. I think both those other policies that are on the agenda for tonight, I think those are both trash. I think this mask mandate is trash, and I think it needs to be stopped now, tonight. We need to stop kicking this cat down the street. Let it go. You wanna wear a mask? Everybody has the choice to wear a mask. You're not giving us our choice. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay. Yeah, if you do, please come up.
Hi, my name is Rachel Califf. I'm a military wife, new to Deerfield, and I'm actually new to New Hampshire. We're on Pleasant Hill Road. I'm also the homeschooling mom to 6 children, ages 6 to 16. I teach elementary school, middle school, and high school every single day, all day long. You might wonder why, as a homeschooling mother, I'm here today. It's because the children in this school are my children's peers. They are their friends, their future colleagues, their future spouses. They are, in fact, the future of our country. And we all know that agendas aren't just pushed in media to adults, but to children in schools. And make no mistake, this is a political agenda. That's what masks is. It is one that will take away more and more freedoms. It'll take away your parental rights and those of your children. And it is legalizing discrimination against you. My heart is breaking at the lessons that we are teaching our children in schools. That you have no bodily autonomy. That your rights don't matter. That standing for your rights is selfish. That your parents have no say. You have no choice. That blind obedience and submission to authority, when that authority has overstepped its bounds, is somehow laudable. These are not the right lessons to teach our children and our future citizens. Remove the mask mandate. Show genuine leadership. Leadership that violates freedom for the sake of a false sense of safety is not leadership. Leadership that encourages an environment that promotes fear rather than courage is cowardly. Unmask our children. As I fear that my words will have fallen on deaf ears, though I hope otherwise, I have a word for the parents that are here today and the ones that are listening and watching. If this board, if your leaders can't respect you or your children, if tonight's meeting results in masks tomorrow, walk away. Homeschool. I will never tell you that homeschooling is easy. I'm a homeschool graduate, and I have been a homeschool parent for 16 years. Because I homeschooled from the day my children were born. But just like parenting, homeschooling is full of sacrifice, financially, time, energy, and certainty. But just like parenting, it is worth it. And as a parent, you are equipped to teach your children. I'm begging you to stand up for your children, to stand firm for their rights and their true physical, emotional, and mental well-being. And I'm telling you that I am here as a homeschool parent in your community to support you in a choice to homeschool if this board does not respect you. I'm here to offer help and guidance, to tell you how to do it, to show you the resources in the curriculum. I can hook you up with HSLDA and we can talk about your legal rights. There are an abundance of homeschool parents, a growing abundance, that would be happy to help you in this state and nationwide. I hope that you will continue to provide a quality education to the students in this community, regardless of their choice to wear a mask or not. But if you don't, I highly encourage everyone to walk away. Thank you for listening.
Any additional comments?
Good evening, Brad Christensen. I live on Church Street. I'm a first grader here. I've been meaning to come to these for a while. I just want to thank each one of you. I know this is not easy and my first time, and I can only imagine how this has gone since this mask mandate went into effect. A couple points that I wanted to jot down. I'm not nearly as organized as some of these others, but I might be soon. I could come here, I could rattle off all the studies and the data that I'm sure you've heard and read countless times at this point, the PCR test, the antigen testing, the viral loads and the transmission rates, things like that that just come in, come out. One side has, the answer, the other side has the counter, and it just goes back and forth over and over and over again. And, when I got this email that we're starting this mask mandate, I emailed the board. I got 2 responses, which is great. Frankly, I didn't expect one, just because I thought you guys were crazy busy. So I appreciate the response. And I got 2 main reasons that I took out from each email. One was with the COVID cases trending upwards. We want to make sure that basically stops. We don't want it to go up, whatever it was, 5 or 6 to 8 or 9 or something. Certainly under 20. Under 15 at that time. And then also the other response was with the Deerfield Fair coming up, we want to make sure that, I'm sorry, that was all part of the same one. The Deerfield Fair, we want to make sure that things are safe and steady. And then the other was that case rates for minors, for children, were going up as well. And I have to say, I can understand the pressure that you guys are probably facing with the Deerfield Fair coming up, and it was canceled last year. We want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can. Here we go. Okay, gotcha. But then the cases trending up for minors or for children. And I gotta say, I'm sitting here going, I'm not afraid of a case. And I don't think anybody here being a parent is afraid of a case. We're parents, kids get sick all the time. We're afraid of our children dying. And that's not happening. And I said in my emails and responses, like, I feel like a crazy person having to say, but our kids aren't dying, but, that's where we're left, because, I think I looked today, roughly 600 kids in the entire United States have died. We don't know what their comorbidities were. We can only guess. 600 out of 75 million. That's not very good at math, but that's a really high exponent to the negative power, or however it's said, again, not good at math. And you stop and you think, okay, 600, well, that's nothing to scoff at. Well, 600 is statistically insignificant compared to the general population when you're looking at this. More kids have died from drowning, firearms, motor vehicle accidents, the flu, heart disease than COVID, independently. And so we need to stop using the excuse, and I received this from one of the responses, we're protecting the children. Like, our kids are safe. If you're gonna start coming out with reasons, make it factual, whether it be, we're trying to protect the community by making sure the kids don't come home with COVID. But no one here, shouldn't be at least, afraid of their kids getting sick with COVID, because really the chances of them drowning in the middle of fall, in the middle of New England, is greater than them dying from COVID right now. So I'm sitting here wondering what's going to change the board's mind. It's my understanding that at one point the vote was 2-3 for anti-mask, or for no mask, and then it switched. I might be wrong, but Mark Twain, I think, gets his credit for this saying, but I don't think he actually said it, or it's not publicized. But it's easier to fool someone than to convince someone they're being fooled. And so, if the board is waiting for everyone behind me to come and say, oh yes, we support the mask, or 100% the opposite, we don't support the mask, it's not gonna happen. People are dug in, their heels are dug in, they're trenched in, their position's not going to change. And so you're left with really looking at the data, which is really hard to discern because the parameters are gonna be different all across the board. But so I guess my point here is I would ask that the board look what's in front of them, look what's happening with their eyes. We just had a fair of 100,000, I don't know what the number is, people in our tiny little town, and we have 3 new cases, and that was 2.5, 3 weeks ago, which is perfect amount of time for those cases to skyrocket, and they're not. And so, meanwhile, we look around, whether it's sporting events, concerts, I don't know, just all the restaurants, gyms. At first we were blaming everything. We were blaming all these different avenues for that's how COVID's spreading, including schools, including churches. And now, a year and a half later, all those are opening back up. And, mostly maskless or mask optional. Some are saying, oh, now you have to get the vaccine. And I'm fearful for what I'm reading in the news now for what this room might look like in a couple weeks. But all those events, these sporting events, these college football games with tens of thousands of people are congregating, screaming at each other, using the same bathrooms, the same doors, the same facilities. And, you've got Dr. Fauci say, oh, this is going to be a super spreader event. Watch out for these southern states. And now all we're seeing is cases going down. And so to go back to my point, each side is going to come up with a rationale for why those cases are going down now. And it's always going to fit their narrative, regardless of the side. But to keep blaming our kids for this, that's where I'm having a hard time, because my 6-year-old is going, why do I only have to wear a mask at school? I don't have to do it at church. I don't have to do it at the grocery store. I don't have to do it when we go out to eat. Play in the playground. I didn't have to do it over the summer in my daycare I had hundreds of kids maskless. But I have to do it at school, and it's crazy that we keep putting the onus on them, like they're the reason. They're the only way out, but really I feel like they're the easiest target because they don't make any money, they don't generate revenue, but we can control them. And so I guess I would just ask the board to say, to again, look in front of them, realize that, yeah, I would be singing a different tune if there was a substantially different situation in our school and kids were getting taken out and going to the hospital, and my son's day preschool was constantly getting blown up by COVID and people were falling all over the streets, but that's simply not happening. People are able to scream at each other at concerts, and they're fine, but my 6-year-old can't read a book in his first grade class, and he's trying to look at his teacher and say, are you saying shake or snake? And this is just gonna keep compounding year after year. I heard you saying something, frankly, I couldn't understand what you were saying. And I just think, wow, that's what my son listens to day in and day out. And he's trying to learn how to read. So, thank you very much for your time, I appreciate it.
Do we have any additional comments from the audience? Sir, please come up.
I apologize for coming late.
Can we get your name for the minutes?
Oh, yes, my name is Robert Galantine, and I live right in town on Ridge Road. I apologize if I repeat anything. I tried to watch what I could while I was at my daughter's sporting event earlier. I really wanted to start by saying that I respect where everybody stands. It's kind of the core of democracy, and I feel like a lot of people have unfortunately forgotten that. We should be able to have very open conversations, heated conversations, even arguments, without passing a certain line. And I feel it is an absolute necessity to apologize for the people that have stepped over that line, whether it be the people that are threatening board members that they disagree with, or the people on the other side threatening people who are starting petitions, which is our right as citizens, and even destroying property. I think that we as a group, we as a town, absolutely need to stand together to say enough is enough of that. And if we know people that are doing that, friends, family, loved ones, we need to immediately call them out on that and tell them to stop. That's not the town that I moved to about a decade ago, a little over a decade ago. Going back to the discussion at hand, the mask mandates, I have worked with kids for over a decade in all sorts of fashions, coaching youth sports, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. In the past few years, I started working in a school. I started here as a substitute. I worked about a year as a para, and now I'm out of town in a high school as a para. And I would like to discuss that from what I've seen. The gentleman before me talked about how his child can't hear properly. There are 4 types of learning: visual, audio, I might have said that wrong, tactile or kinetic or kinesthetic or something like that, and writing and reading. Outside of children that need paras, that need extra hands, that have IEPs, these 4 types of learning are detrimental for every single child, no matter where they are on the spectrum. The smartest kids in the class relying on one of these 4 methods to be the smartest kid in the class, to understand and comprehend what they are learning. Masks make it incredibly difficult to learn, so through audio, visual, you can't read mouths, and that's very difficult. You can't read expressions, which is very difficult. And it's difficult for kids that are okay. It's difficult for my daughter, who is a strong student in the 2nd grade. Never mind mentally, never mind the stress or her anxiety. It is just difficult for her understanding of how stories are read or how expressions are had through her friends and teachers, faculty members. Moving to kids that I have worked with and that I work with now, masks are crippling these students that need the help the most. They are crippling these students. Not going into names or grades, because I wouldn't want to pass that line. 2 of the boys that I have been with, here or there, needed visually to understand my body language. It was the only way I could get them to calm down enough to pay attention in a classroom to their teacher, to even begin to try to edge them into that curriculum of the day. If I was having an off day, and this was pre-mask, if I was having an off day and I just wasn't bubbly and happy and eager to be there, if they could not see that on my face, that day was shot. It did not go well. It was on record that they had trouble, that they weren't listening, they were acting out, and it was simply because they couldn't see that I was ready for them that day. Now, it didn't mean I didn't do my job. I did my job. I tried extra hard to get through that day. Everybody has bad days, but kids that have certain IEPs don't understand that. And you know, they shouldn't have to. They should still be able to reconcile what they can see on people's faces. One of the children I was with had a very hard time understanding what I was saying, even if I was reading slowly, if I over-pronunciated words for them to understand, to get through, you know, their reading books, their A, B, C's, or whatever level they were at.
Mr. Valentine, because we do have other people here on an agenda, could you try to?
Yeah, so my opinion from what I've seen within a school, working with kids that need the basic 4 functions of learning, is that masks has really hindered that. Now, I'm not saying no masks across the board, it really has to be a discussion and a open consideration, but there should be, at least at the bare minimum, there should be a way for students and families to particularly argue for their individual students. If they cannot learn without masks, then the mask ultimately is doing more harm than it is for good. And I just wanted that to be brought up. I wanted to talk about that. You know, and I'm sure more can be asked of the faculty, the special educators, the case managers in town. We're incredibly lucky to have really amazing people that are in those positions that have altering opinions, but I think that at the core they would very much fight for what's best for each student. So,
thank you. Do we have any additional comments? All right, seeing, I'm sorry, sir.
Cooper, North Road. You know, there's been a lot of really confident declarations made tonight, and this is something I emailed the board earlier, and realistically, I worry sometimes that there's confusion between an observational truth and a personal truth. People can have a personal truth where it is in fact a truth to them. My child is in fact struggling in school. That's a personal truth, that doesn't make it wrong. However, that's not the same as saying every child is struggling in school with a mask. That would be an observational truth, where we could see it from every viewpoint in here, and it can be multiplied across the board. Causation and correlation are 2 different things. A child struggling with a mask is not equivalent to every child struggling with a mask. If I were to step up here and say that my son is excelling in school while wearing a mask, when optional or not optional, that trivializes the viewpoint of the other parent. It doesn't do any good. What we need to focus on is what we're trying to discuss being COVID mitigation. Not feelings about masks, not politics, not freedom, COVID mitigation. A lot of the time it boils down to straw man arguments. If you make me wear a mask, I'm losing freedom. Now instead of focusing on COVID mitigation, we're focusing on freedom, and we're detracting from the overall topic at hand. As far as, you know, people saying that masks are harming kids, I'd ask how. That's a uniquely American viewpoint. Other countries have been wearing masks for decades. This is not a new occurrence. There are studies out there that show that masks are not harmful. You've heard tonight a couple times, I could get into the science of it, but I won't. Why not? That's what we should be looking at. And the science behind it is on the CDC website. There are studies about the efficacy of masks and the fact that they're not harming kids. We're also hearing about fear, right? If you mask our kids, we're living in fear. So if we want to wear a mask, then somehow that makes us afraid. But the counter to that is if you mandate a mask, I'm losing my freedom. So we're focusing on fear on one side and then saying a reason for that fear is because I don't want to lose my freedom. No one here is losing freedom. This is no different than any other school policy. My kid feels as though he's losing his freedom when he can't wear his hood at school. Yet no one's petitioning to allow hoods to be allowed. We're in the middle of a pandemic. This is slightly different than what we would normally accustomed see. So we're asking for a slight change. Wear a mask. As far as freedom is concerned, everyone that registered their kids here had to provide their medical history for their children, their immunization records. There was no concern about freedom. They had to show proof of residency. They had to show a mortgage statement or a rental statement. There was no concern of freedom. If they were looking for financial assistance, they had to offer financial income statements to the school. But no one's concerned with freedom until we get around to wearing a mask. This is not about freedom. It's not about taking away rights. It's not about making people feel bad. It's about a COVID mitigation policy. So what we're trying to determine is what policy can we enact to stop the spread of COVID, right? People say there's all sorts of mitigation efforts possible. We're not social distancing. Building is too small. We say vaccines are readily available. To what demographic? Well, and I've said this multiple times. I would understand if parents were saying, hey, my kid is above 12, age 12 or older. Why are they being forced to wear a mask? But everyone under the age of 12 has literally no COVID mitigation ability. People are saying, hey, why is it they only have to wear a mask in school? Well, if you listen to the CDC guidance, the same scientists that are giving us the information about the school, they recommend under 12, wear it when you're indoors. If parents choose not to enforce that, we can't use that as an argument to take away the mitigation policy for the school. Once again, the purpose of this, I want to stress this, it's not fear, it's not freedom, it's not telling people what to do, it's simply a COVID mitigation policy. So the policy boils down to, what are you trying to do? We're trying to stop the spread of a viral pandemic. How do we do it? Well, we look at mitigation efforts. Vaccines. No one here has said anything about wanting to mandate vaccines. That conversation is going to come down the road, and I'm sure we'll circle back, just like every other immunization record.
Folks,
That ain't happening.
folks.
Just like every other immunization record out there. So right now, we're asking, what can we do to safely protect children and stop the spread? We put a piece of cloth over their face. It's not that difficult.
10%.
Sorry?
Folks, this isn't a back and forth amongst the audience. Everybody's had an opportunity to speak. We need to keep it, these are your comments directed towards the board. Thank you, sir. Is there any additional comments before we move on? All right. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. We're going to move on with the agenda. Next item, agenda review. I don't have any additional items. Patty, was there anything else?
Yes, we have one leave request to add to 4C. So there'll be 2 consent items. And then you had a Parks and Rec request put into your drive today, and I believe Nick is here to talk to you about that.
Is Nick here? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you hiding back there. Nick. Why don't we, what do we want to put Nick, folks? Do you want to put him in I, or do we, Nick, help? What do you want to do? We're going to be long, I'm sure.
It does mention masks in the proposed policy.
It does.
It does mention masks.
It does. What would you like to put Nick?
G, I mean, we can move the mask thing up.
Okay.
Well, I don't know how, well, yeah, I'm gonna talk about that, I don't know.
Why don't we move them under F?
Move him under F? All right. Does that work, Patty?
Sure.
It's going to be a little bit, Nick. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I didn't see you hiding there. All right, so any other agenda items from the board members? Okay, brings us to correspondence. Consistent with the theme over the last, probably month and a half or so, we are continuing to receive emails both in support of the masking policies that are currently in place and also in support of having a mask optional policy. It's been fairly consistent. Any other comments from any of the other board members? Okay. Next up, item E, the petition for a special meeting. What does the board want to do?
Well, I will make a motion to decline calling a special meeting. I will make.
It's important to recognize that the meeting itself, if we were to hold it, comes with it a series of costs and concerns. One of them is that the cost of running the meeting itself, we would have to go through the process of holding a deliberative session, then having a voting day, very similar to how we do things in the February and March annual meeting. That's going to cost the taxpayers money to be able to pull that cost. Might end up it's in that ballpark. Excuse me. I think I agree that that's not something that is a good use of our money at this point. Second, that in many cases a petitioned article that shows up on the March warrant is often advisory in nature anyway. It's rare, or I have not in my time here seen a lot of petitioned articles that show up on the warrant that actually are binding, so to speak. And so this would likely be an unbinding situation as well. Like I said, because there's no money, so this would be an unbinding decision even if the town were to vote in that direction. And so I feel that this would be both sending the wrong message that we would be giving the town authority that we can't do, and also spending money that we think can be spent, or that, I'll speak for myself, that can be spent better in other places. So I support this motion. Jeffrey.
Is this on? Yep, cool. I think it's also important to highlight for anyone listening at home or in the audience, the difference between the school board and the petition meeting. The legislative body is the district meeting, and the legislative body in SB2 town has the ability to make warrants for appropriations, things that deal with our budget and how we spend our money. The governing body is the school board. That RSA that was used to call a special meeting is meant for that legislative body to deal with appropriations. Approving the special meeting would set a precedent that essentially the town would govern itself anytime it got 50 petitions on how this school is run. Every single policy decision could be called for a special meeting, and we would be having special meetings as frequently as we got 50 signatures to debate policy. Now, I know that masks are an incredibly divisive issue, but masks are a policy. And we have hundreds of policies that if we set that precedent, we would then open ourselves up to being governed by special meeting. And that's why I support this motion.
Any additional comments from the board? I'll just echo the comments that have been made. Although I certainly respect the desire of some members of the community to have a special meeting, we have to look at the legality of that special meeting, and for me, it's pretty cut and dry. So, absent that being a legally called for meeting, I have to support, obviously, this article. The ability to set policy is given by RSA to individual boards, and it is not, policy-making decisions are not, it's not an authority given to the legislative bodies at these public meetings. So, you know, I think this motion certainly goes in a correct and legal direction. Additional, Gigi?
And I would agree with that, and it's challenging because I feel like boards in general, by law, are in awkward positions to not necessarily have the ability, in some ways, to have structured communication with its constituents. We have public comments that are good, and it's challenging, but I also, so it's hard to make that motion. But on the other hand, I agree in terms of the legal ramifications of that motion, that we also we have a legal responsibility to follow guidelines that are set out by the Department of Health and Human Services.
I'll also add that this petition appears to have made its way around many districts throughout the state, and all but one district, to my knowledge, have acted in a similar fashion to the direction, or at least to this particular motion. So, is there any additional comments? We ready to vote? All in favor of the motion as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It's 4-1. The motion passes. Next up, we have the matrix.
Does everyone have a copy in front of them?
Yes.
So I updated the information based on the case count today on the map, and after speaking with Nurse Bonnie, the level of county transmission is still considered substantial, excuse me, as is the town. Rockingham County substantial, Deerfield active cases 17, Deerfield Community School 1, and percent of population fully vaccinated is 52.8. The last page is where you, how you determine the level of community transmission using the grid, and that would be number of cases of new infections per 100,000 over 14 days, brings you to 537.4, and over 100 is considered substantial. And your test positivity rate is now registering on the map. It had been, hadn't been showing up because of the suppressed data, and it's now at 11.7.
All right, any questions regarding or discussion regarding the data? Jeff?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I would make a motion that we adopt the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services masking matrix based on Deerfield level data. Assessment of the most recently available data on the State of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services COVID-19 website shall be done on each Friday, with parents being notified of the upcoming week's mask requirement by end of day Friday. If during any week the school is in a mask optional scenario and cases rise to a level where masking is suggested by the matrix to be mandatory, staff shall notify families via One Call Now, and masks shall be required the following day until the end of that week, where a new assessment of the data will be done for the upcoming week. This motion is to be revisited 5 weeks after the COVID-19 vaccine becomes available for children ages 5 to 11 years of age, or until such time that the masking guidance issued by New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services has changed.
Do we have a second on that motion? I'll second it for discussion. Jeff, go ahead.
So,
Jeff, can you, is there a way to either send me the language that I'm voting on? Can you email that to me or something like that, or? That's a big motion.
Yep, so perhaps I could quickly give you it was wordy because I wanted it to be thorough, but real quick I'll outline with the intent of the motion.
That said, I'm still needing to see the language before I vote on it.
Am I allowed to email it, Patty? I mean,
You can email it and I'll post it publicly afterwards.
okay, so I'll email it to you and the board.
Yes, and I'll post it for the public to see.
Thank you.
Give me just a moment.
Andy, you wanna?
We're in discussion, Lynn.
Yes.
If I understood the motion correctly, it's gonna use Deerfield data for whether masks are gonna be mandatory or optional. And the concern that I have is just based on this matrix in front of me, the county data or that chart is the same as Deerfield. So right now, we're still in universal mask mandates. So my concern is it doesn't take into consideration, I guess, the data of our town and our town's population. It's using our case numbers and then data for a population of 100,000, which we are not. So I think that both the county table and the Deerfield data table are inaccurate and don't represent transmission or case spread in our town and school.
So the Deerfield data, mathematically, a state of substantial spread is 4.5, basically. Cases in town is what will place Deerfield in a substantial category. So obviously we don't have half people, so it would be cases greater than 5 or less than 5. Which is what the formula that we're applying is based on the data provided by the state. Jeff?
Okay, so I emailed that to you guys. You should have it in your email.
Yes, thank you.
Momentarily. To kind of break that down from the wordiness of it, what that motion does is it has us following New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services guidelines. It gives us a defined end and a defined start based on the levels of cases in Deerfield. One of the concerns when I made the motion last meeting was the impact on administration of needing to flip-flop back and forth on a theoretically daily, every other daily basis, and that being a burden. So what I did was I cleaned up the language so that we would make an assessment on Friday that would be in effect for the following week. Say, for example, the way the language works is, say, for example, we were mask optional Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday cases spike, we'd send out a one call now, and we'd be masks mandatory until Friday, at which case we would make an assessment again. So we may be going back and forth once a week. Cases don't drop off that quick though, so it's not a likely scenario, but it was language I put in there to address the concerns from the last meeting. Additionally, with the ability for 5 to 11-year-olds to be vaccinated in what sounds like the upcoming weeks, people will then be able to protect their children because, as we've discussed before, masks not just protect the wearer, but they protect everyone around you. Once children are vaccinated, we can revisit that and make that decision to go masks optional. Additionally, we have provisions in there that if guidance changes from the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services, we're able to revisit the motion at that time as well. So I think it gives us a good amount of flexibility, addresses the concerns from last week, and also gives parents the clarity they need for defined start and end dates.
Additional discussion. Andy, go ahead.
So I guess the challenge that I still have is nothing in here says optional. So we're basically dictating for other people what decisions that they should be making and what things that they should be following. So I can't support it in that regard. I think that, people should be wearing masks if they want to wear masks, and we shouldn't force a decision to, if I look at my notes, protecting children and protecting people around them. If I look at the state of New Hampshire's COVID dashboard, and age group 0 to 9 has 0 deaths. 10 to 19, 0 deaths. So one death is too many, but I can't believe we're making decisions to mandate things on people to protect the children when the data in the science shows us that mandating masks isn't going to effectively, protect the children. So I have no words for that.
Okay, go ahead.
As I've said in previous weeks, my concern is not so much the kids, although obviously I'm concerned about the kids, otherwise I wouldn't be on the school board, I wouldn't be teaching. But in this case, we've seen, as was pointed out by many speakers this evening, that the disease seen in the younger grades is not as significant as it is seen in some of the older community members of Deerfield. And so I'm concerned, yes, for the kids, but at the same time, the idea of them bringing home or passing around the virus in this building and then bringing it home to otherwise health compromised people at home. And so the bigger community is what I'm thinking about as I look at this. And to me, the idea of going back and forth is still a little bit, I think, too flexible. I am concerned, like I said, that a lot of these cases, the spike did happen, 17 within a couple weeks after the fair. I don't know whether they're linked or not. But Raymond, people may or may not be aware of that, had to shut down. They didn't shut down, but they went to remote education, something that nobody wants to return to. At least speaking for myself, I don't want to return to remote education. I feel like most people are on that side with me. But Raymond had to do it because the number of cases spiked right after the fair. I don't know if they're related or not, but certainly that is a concern. And I want to do whatever I can do as a board member to keep education in this building happening, because we've seen over the last couple of years that that's how education happens most effectively. So that's one of my concerns. The other one is that I like the last part here where it talks about waiting to see how masking guidance changes from the DHHS. Since that's the state's recommendation, if we take it upon ourselves to start to make our own decisions, I think that gets into sort of dicier water and not as defensible if something were to happen, and if the board would be to some degree perhaps liable, we are responsible for our kids and keeping them healthy, and this seems like the best mitigating step that we can take. For that reason, I would like to consider I would be in favor of mandating masks until the 5-week time limit that you brought up here, 5 weeks after the COVID vaccine becomes available for children under age 12. And like you said, that sounds like it's only several weeks away, something to look forward to, but that I would be in favor of.
That's it. Gigi, did you have a thought before we want to move on?
Go ahead.
All right, Jeff, go ahead.
I guess real quick to your point, Nate, the following New Hampshire DHHS guidelines, being the concern, the mandate versus, optional, right? They've given us a matrix, which they've gone through and said, at this rate of transmission. Now, I know your concerns previously expressed where maybe the data is not accurate and we could be in universal and it's showing substantial instead of moderate. But I do think that we're protected from a liability level following their data and their matrix. And when that data drops and their matrix says, okay, it's okay to go mask optional, I think from, a letter of the law perspective and interpretation, we're in good shape. I also just have to point out, that there's so much anger at us, and Sure, that's what we signed up for, even though we had no idea. But when in the history of our lives have we looked at the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services and said, you know what, we're not gonna listen to them. You know what, we're just gonna ignore that science and that medicine. You know, we all grew up listening to that science and that medicine, suddenly it's junk. And maybe it's political and, oh, maybe it's all Biden, but you know what, we live in a state under Governor Chris Sununu, a Republican. And we live and operate under his Department of Health and Human Services. So to be angry at us who are volunteering and taking up so much mental energy, Kevin, you wanna laugh? Go for it.
I do.
Go for it, it's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, it is something I wouldn't wish on any of you having to make these decisions. And all we are doing is trying to follow the guidelines of the Department of Health and Human Services. You think I'm living in fear? Absolutely not. I don't live in fear. I'm trying to follow the science that for 37 years of my life I did. I got my vaccines. I did what the doctor said. And you know what? I'm here because of it. So if you want to take out your anger, just consider why you're really angry. I am sick of COVID. It has ruined our lives, but this school board is not where your anger should be directed.
Additional comments? Andy, go ahead.
You hear a lot about, we want to look at, New Hampshire DHHS for guidelines, and we're always asking for other people to give us the answer or tell us what to do. And I guess my question to the board would be is if we just want to rely on DHHS to tell us what to do, why are we even here? I mean, it goes much broader than just this topic. Like, we're here to make decisions on a local basis for local control and use the data that's available to us. So I just think that making decisions because someone else says that that's what we should do is the wrong thing to do. I think that choice is important. We had a warrant article, the community came together and said that they wanted school choice. So the board took action and is pursuing that. Why can we not take the same approach with masks? They should be optional. Seems like a no-brainer to me. And as the motion is written, for obvious reasons, I can't support it.
So in regard, go ahead, Angie.
I was just gonna, I was just thinking about other instances where we have legislated health-related things. We legislate a lot of other health-related things. I was thinking a lot about smoking. Kids used to be able to smoke in school. And then we recognized that that was a pretty unhealthy thing for them to do. And science and the data showed up that if they continued to smoke, they would probably get CPOD, lung cancer. So there really has been a history of legislating behavior in order to change our health-related patterns. And I simply just bring that up because I feel like I'm in a position where I should be, again, paying attention and trying to do what is in the best interest of the health of the community. And we're all working in totally uncharted territory. It's not out of fear, it's mostly just continuing to try, as I think someone had said, it was like looking at what are the mitigating strategies that we can use that will keep the community as safe as possible and not put us in a position where we would return to remote learning. I may be wrong. I could, but maybe some other schools will all take their masks off and everybody will be fine. But it doesn't appear to be playing out that way. And I would hate for us to get to a place where we would end up back in a remote learning situation.
And so as hard as it is to hear of all the struggles that people are talking about, for themselves and their children personally, I see my job as to try to look at the whole and try to make the best decision possible for the health of the community. So I guess that's all I can say.
So I'll start by saying I am not a fan of masks. However, I have to sit here and make decisions that I think best represent the community. And so more often than not, I have to sit here and make decisions that I wouldn't make as a parent, but I have to make them as a board member. And that's not a fun process. I also know that if COVID takes hold in this building and starts to infect staff and starts to infect students, we're closed. If we don't have enough staffing in the building to open, the kids are remote, and that's the last thing I want to go to. So I have to look at every aspect of this and try to find a suitable solution. These decisions suck. They suck to make every week. I don't enjoy it. It's not fun. There's much better things this board can be doing with its time as far as the other projects and goals that we have ahead of us. That being said, I have consistently asked for finding a way to define a beginning and define an end to this. So whether it's using data or science or something else, so that we're not reviewing it on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. We have a lot of other work to do, and we need to get into a situation where the community has a clear understanding of when we will or will not pivot from masks being optional to masks being mandatory. So I wholeheartedly support what Jeff's language is in this amendment to the masking policy is. I hope that the data will drop, and if this passes, if the community drops to the point where there is, a non-substantial caseload, then we can be in an optional masking situation. And if the data comes back and presents itself where we're in a substantial caseload, then we need to be in a masking situation for the staff, for the students. I understand wholeheartedly that there's a lot of people out there that don't like masks. Mr. Galantine, I'm sorry, this is the board's conversation as much as it is anything else. It's not a.
I was just hoping for just clarification, because I didn't understand like a part of the.
We'll review the policy again before we vote on it. So, that being said, I hope we can actually pass this so that we can have a defined beginning, as I've repeatedly said 100 times, and a defined end to this. So, my thoughts, any additional discussion?
And I never know when I'm asking administration if I'm putting them on the spot. So hopefully they'll tell me at some point, like, hey, don't put me on the spot. But, I would like to know, does that sound like a viable logistics? Is that a logistically sound thing that we can do?
I think we will make whatever needs to happen work. Yes. Sending my entity to you.
Gotcha. So
I am happy, I will do what the board asks me to do.
Okay.
All right, Andy?
So we had a plan in place coming into our last meeting for what to do if there was a COVID case in the building. And at that same meeting, we decided to literally ignore the work that we had already done, that the administration had done to put that recommendation or that language together for us to review. We had adopted it at the previous meeting, and then we came into the meeting on the 6th and decided that we were gonna ignore that and just mandate masks. So I hear people talking about, we need to have a plan in place and we need to have a stop and a start, and we had that. We had masks optional unless certain conditions and criteria were met with a stepped escalation process for one case in the building, multiple cases in a grid, which I thought was reasonable and fair to everyone. And now we're basically going to a policy that mandates it, and We've been above 10 cases in town for I don't know how long. We had someone already said we had 100,000 people or more come through the Deerfield Fair, and we had 3 or 5 additional cases in town. So I think it's ludicrous that we're passing this or that we're even talking about it. So I'm disappointed, and again, I can't vote in favor of this.
All right, do we have any additional discussion? Jeff, would you read the motion one more time, just to make sure we're all clear on it, the audience as well? Mike? Thank you.
I make a motion to adopt the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services masking matrix based on our town level data. Assessment of the most recently available data on the State of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services COVID-19 website shall be done on each Friday, with parents being notified of the upcoming week's mask requirement by end of day Friday. If during any week the school is in a mask optional scenario and cases rise to a level where masking is suggested by the matrix to be mandatory, staff shall notify families via One Call Now, and masks shall be required the following day until the end of that week, where a new assessment of the data will be done for the upcoming week. This motion is to be revisited 5 weeks after the COVID-19 vaccine becomes available for children ages 5 to 11 years of age, or until such time that the masking guidance issued by the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services has changed.
All right. So that's the motion, it was moved and seconded. Nate?
One last question that just popped in. So should we add something that says whichever comes first or last? Does it matter which one comes first? Which one are we prioritizing, or is that not really?
I don't know that
It's an
or. It's an or.
Either one
Yeah.
will be cause for us to revisit it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's or until.
Any additional questions from the board or comments from the board? Seeing none, all in favor of the proposed language?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
All right, so, do we have any additional conversation regarding how we're, okay?
I'd like to make a motion. I'll move that we require masks in DCS until the COVID-19 vaccine becomes fully available for children under age 12. And at that point, revisit our policy.
Does Nate have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Go ahead, Nate.
I like the idea of tying it to the data. I'm not opposed to that, but we can't see the future, obviously, and the idea of it bouncing around is something that I want to have a little bit more consistency and something that people, whether it's administration, teachers, parents, can plan on. And this will be more of like as far as we can tell from the news, sort of a 5-week window. It sounds like in November, from the last thing I heard, it's coming up soon-ish. Wait a month for those students who choose to or families who choose to get vaccinated. Presumably it'll take a 5-week window like the last one. And then we revisit it, and at that point I would be much more open to making masks optional at that point, given whatever's happening in the winter, but I'd be more open to it at that point.
Jeff, go ahead.
I guess I'm just, I understand the concern with not wanting to bounce back and forth, but I mean, since August, Deerfield has not been able to get its numbers down, right? So I understand the concern about making it difficult on administration, but if that was the reason, I don't think that that's something we really need to be concerned about happening, because since this pandemic started, I don't think we've seen a scenario where we've bounced above that 4 case, right? It's 4 cases in Deerfield, 4.11 something. We haven't seen that fluctuation to the best of my memory, so I get the concern, but I don't understand why we would go mandatory when we have a matrix we can use. And the concern isn't probably all that founded as far as the fluctuation.
I think that, yes, I hear that, and perhaps you have a good point.
But I think if we're looking for some sort of a compromise that we can, here's an end date that we can agree on, that is something that, from my perspective, I can agree on. And speaking for the people that I hear from regularly, that sounds like something that they can agree on, they would be supportive of in this town. We heard from a lot of people tonight, but at the same time, we do hear from a lot of other people in town who feel less comfortable coming into a room like this, and so that's why many of them are not here. So I do hear people who have other concerns, and so in representing that concern, and hearing Zach's goal for some sort of, I think it's a good goal, I agree, and I think to me, a rational, reasonable one would be when the students in this school that we're serving have had that chance, or those families have had that chance to take that last step of accessing the protection that they're looking for.
We'll give David first.
So, the language basically to mandate masks until a vaccine is fully available for children under 12. My concern is that we're gonna be in the same predicament that we are now, where there are opposing groups in support of and opposed to vaccines. So for that reason, I would like us, I mean, it's your motion, but I'm just sharing that I would prefer to return to a scenario, because it would apply both for masks and for vaccines, that we reinstate the policy that we had in place before, where if there was a case in school, we have mitigation, that's a popular word, steps in place to counteract cases in the building, multiple grade levels. So I would not be in support of mandating masks until a vaccine is available for children under 12, because again, we're gonna find that there are opposing views. And I think the best course of action is to use the plan that we had in place, because with vaccines or without vaccines, you can still contract the virus and you can still transmit it. So I don't necessarily know that the vaccines for children are gonna solve the problem that we have.
Jeff, go ahead.
In order to make this not a bi-weekly discussion that is prohibiting us from getting to important things like our budget that we need to, I'd like to propose two amendments to your motion. One, to clean the language up for, instead of children under 12, I'd like to change it to ages 5 to 11. Do we have to vote on that first, or to make all the?
Let's throw away thinking and then clean it up into one.
Yep. And then I would like to add the caveat that in the case that for some reason the vaccine is not approved for that age group, that we reserve the right to revisit the policy at the first school board meeting, January 2022, or guidance from New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services changes.
Okay, so you're proposing an amendment, you just throw those two items out there so that we have it.
Second.
Okay, so your proposed amendment is to change it so that vaccine is available ages 5 to 11. And what was the second one, Jeff?
So ages 5 to 11, and that we, in addition to that being the point at which we revisit the mandate, we also add or the first meeting of January, first school board meeting of January 2022, or guidance changes from New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. So there would be 3 trigger points at which we would revisit that.
No.
That's right. So the motion, if
I get the first one.
masks would be mandatory until the vaccine becomes available for children ages 5 to 11. Or guidance from New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services changes. And if neither of those two conditions have been met, we revisit the item at the first school board meeting, January 2022.
Okay, does Jeff have a second on that?
Yeah, I seconded it.
He has a second on that, okay. Nate did. Okay, so any additional discussion regarding the amendment to Nate's original motion? Andy?
So I just can't help but think we're kicking the can down the road. we're trying to make a decision now about masks, and now we're saying, okay, well, we're not gonna have opposing views when vaccines become available. And then again, we're, deferring to guidance from DHHS, which I think has been pretty consistent that, masks are recommended. And again, similar to what I had said earlier, I don't see the current amended motion as presented as solving the problem of COVID cases occurring in our building. Whether you have a vaccine or not, it's still possible to contract and transmit the virus. So I see this as not addressing the root cause of what we're trying to accomplish, which is protecting people in the building, protecting our community. For that reason, I would not vote in support of this, and I would advocate that we reinstate the plan that was presented to us as COVID mitigation strategies for if there are cases in the building, how to handle them, how to escalate them.
So to that extent, Andy, I think we should act on the current motion, or the current amendment, and if you wanted to pursue going back to the original plan, that's a motion that you should make.
I've been beaten to the punch a couple times, but I will.
All right, so we currently have an amendment. What is the vote on the amendment to Nate's motion? All in favor? Aye. Andy, I'm assuming?
Nope.
Okay. 4-1, so we have an amended motion on the table. In an effort to not have a motion on top of a motion or canceling out, Andy, if you wanted to try to float amending it to your original language, now would be an opportunity to do that, to see if you can get enough traction for it or not.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna have to wordsmith this a little bit, but effectively, I'd like to amend it to say that masks are optional if there are 0 cases in the building, or students have access and or take a vaccine, and then implement the language that we had previously, which was masks are required or mandatory if there's a active case in grade level PK to 6, entire grade level masks for 2 weeks, or until there are no cases in that grade. 1 active case in grade 7 or 8, both grade levels masked for 2 weeks, or until there are no active cases in those grades. 3 or more grade levels with active cases, entire school masks for 2 weeks, or until there are no longer 3 grade levels with cases.
Can I just try to simplify it a little bit?
Go for it.
So instead of the whole part about when masks are optional, I think you just read from the matrix, correct? So could we say, and then just go back to
Correct.
the optional language in the matrix? And then we have to include all the 3,
Yes, go back to the max optional,
Yeah.
okay. So,
just to make it easier.
do you have a second? I'm going to second it because I think we should have the robust discussion. To that extent, Andy, I agree with that policy and that it has clear beginnings and clear endings, but I don't know that it's gonna gain enough traction to go anywhere. So is there any additional commentary? All right, Andy, go ahead.
I'll just say I'm trying to find a common ground between people that want to protect themselves, protect their children, protect the community. With some of the things that I'm hearing is, advocacy for a mask mandate and advocacy for vaccines. I don't see the need for those if there are, 0 cases in the building. We have 1 now, so we have steps in place to mitigate that risk. So I thought that would be common ground that we could all agree on. We've got steps in here and action for when masks are required, availability of vaccines to the student population. So I thought that would be an agreeable common ground.
Jeff, go ahead.
I would just like to point out that matrix, who was it developed by?
It's local.
Local.
It's local.
Okay, so no doctors or scientists.
It's local.
Okay, so I think that making a public health policy on a local level without doctors and scientists input when we have a matrix that was developed by doctors and scientists would be a little presumptuous to think that we're now qualified to overrule medical professionals. And I would also like to point out that, having a matrix that retroactively responds to cases in the building, it's kind of like trying to close the door once the horse has gotten out of the barn. We'll have active cases in the school, which means that they've been in here for, numerous days. So it's a very retroactive policy that I don't support.
Andy, go ahead.
So we took steps at our prior meeting to be proactive. And we saw 3 additional community members. I guess.
I'm sorry, I need to pause for 1 second. This is that. Hello?
Yes. Did I finish?
Yes.
My feedback.
Please finish, go ahead.
So at our last meeting, we took proactive steps. And I think that, again, it goes back to 2 different viewpoints on if we're gonna, label something as reactive or something as proactive. Again, I thought that the motion that I put forward would be common ground because it took into consideration when masks would be mandatory and the access and use of vaccines. So I wouldn't look at that as retroactive or proactive. I just look at that as common ground that we can all agree to. And that's why I made the motion.
Any further comments?
So my own logistical right now, and so we have a motion on the table that would, and you are amending that motion.
Correct.
Oh, we have an amendment, yes, thank you.
Yep.
So I was wondering if you could simply just reread your amendment from my own.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the motion is to update the return to school plan and mask policy to when masks are optional, when there are 0 cases in the building, or when students ages 5 to 11 have access to the vaccine. And then the rest of the language from our when masks are optional policy. Or language, it's not a policy.
Thank you, Annie.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, we're voting on the amendment to the motion now. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
So we count that as 1-4 vote then?
1 yes, 3 no.
I'm sorry, 1-3, we count that as 1.
Yes, correct.
Okay, right.
Okay, so we're back on the motion that has been amended but not discredited, so the amended motion, which is the language that Jeff had proposed. Any clarification needed? You want to read it one more time?
I'm good, unless you want me to.
I think it would be helpful.
Do you have the language for?
That amendment fails, we're back on this.
Okay, all right.
So the motion on the table is for masks to be mandatory until vaccines are available for children ages 5 to 11, or guidance changes as issued by the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. And if neither of those 2 events have occurred, for this issue to be revisited at the first school board meeting of January 2022.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, any additional discussion regarding the motion? Seeing none, All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay. All right. Any additional discussion regarding masks tonight? Apologize to the board members for having to step out, but I just had, there's one place that when they call, I have to answer. Next item would be Mr. Lawrence. Why don't you come on up, sir?
There's no mic over here, is that sufficient?
I can put them out, take one of these, things do you need?
Do that, you have to use your coach's voice.
I can do that.
There we go.
Thank you very much. Did everyone get a copy of the
Yes,
proposal that sent out?
Yes,
Okay, Nick Lawrence, Parks and Rec Director, Town of Deerfield. So I don't want to drag this out too much. This proposal is very consistent with what we proposed last year to get the basketball season going. As most people here probably know, we ran an in-house program that was successful through Parks and Rec. In this season, we are looking to take a little bit of a step forward that is consistent with DCS and the athletic protocols and COVID-19 mitigation efforts that I've seen that were put out. I actually was given to from Chris Kufus today. So basically, we're looking for a return to the traditional recreation basketball program run by DPR at DCS. Basically, the main difference being from last year that we invite a few towns in to play some games and have that traditional feel to it with protocols in place. So go ahead and list the protocols from Chris. And so my understanding of what's in place is spectators will wear masks, coaches wear masks, players on the bench wear masks, players on the court do not need to wear masks, players do not need to wear masks during warm-ups, and the refs are optional. So those are the protocols that are in place. We will have supervision at the gyms for everything that we have in place as far as practices, games go on Saturdays. Games are only played on Saturdays. So we would have supervision seeing that folks are adhering to all the protocols and policies that are consistent from Parks and Rec with DCS athletics. So I would leave it open to you guys for questions on the proposal.
Any questions for Mr. Lawrence? Go ahead.
I'm not sure this is a question for you, but thank you for coming in, Mr. Lawrence, I appreciate this. And the chance to see the proposal ahead of time, I appreciate that. I guess this is maybe partly a question for Chris or this administration. We haven't really talked about policies for the winter sports yet. Is it a safe assumption that if we just passed a mandate for masks going into, let's say it goes to whatever point it does, if it extends into basketball season, does that apply to basketball? Or it sounds like maybe Chris is anticipating not wearing masks during basketball? Can anybody clarify that for me, or maybe you, I'm not sure.
I think, Kristen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Nick just read was what Chris was assuming was going to happen when we get to basketball season, which is consistent with what I've heard from the schools in the league. NHIA did not come out with new recommendations, and I know that some surveys were sent out from NHIA, that is the latest information that I've heard that most schools are following, is that the players don't have to wear masks during basketball when they're playing.
My only concern with that is the, on the soccer field, it's one thing to be bumping into each other without masks on, but inside where, that's the same concern as last year, but I would be curious to hear what other people are saying, or thinking about this question.
So, Patty, can you remind me of do you know the current NHIAA guidelines? What they were, like you said, they haven't changed.
They haven't given any guidance this year.
Okay.
I don't think, I haven't seen
They
any.
said it's all local,
Right,
local
yeah.
decisions.
Yeah.
They push it right back on us.
Of course.
Last year they had very specific guidelines, this year they
Right,
did
that's what I
not.
thought.
Right.
No. Can you maybe, Nick, remind us, what was last year like? Can you remind us what last year was like? It seems, I want to forget it, but I'm trying to forget it.
Me too. Just go back here. So we ran an in-house program through Deerfield Parks and Rec.
we had all the kids wear masks throughout the program. They weren't huge fans of it, but I think they wanted basketball, so they were willing to go with it. And I know that other towns are kind of in the same boat right now, trying to figure out what their protocols are too. So it's just a matter, I guess it's school-to-school decision. And we're just hoping that we can get, as close to normalcy as we can. If we have to offer a program with masks again, I guess we'll do that, because we think basketball is important, sports are important to the kids. But the preference is obviously not hustling down the floor and huffing and puffing with a mask on your face. So that's kind of where we're sitting.
In addition, it was Deerfield teams against Deerfield teams, if I remember correctly.
Correct, yeah, we did not visit any other towns, and they did not visit us.
And then I think you're looking to open that up this year, if I remember correctly.
That would be the goal for sure. We play against other towns like Barrington, Nottingham, Stratford, and possibly Candia this year.
Which are the teams that we're playing against in our division, so
Yep.
minus Candia.
Yep, yeah, we're playing many of those teams in other sports already, soccer, baseball, softball.
When do you hope to have the season start? When is the, kickoff there?
So we usually go off in, we have a jamboree in mid-December. Typically, we like to give the kids a couple of weeks of practice heading up to that. So that's ideal. We did, I think, start a little bit late last year, with everything up in the air. So, I know as a league, we're looking to have a decision and all of our numbers finalized, mid-November if we can help it. And we would like to, we're already behind on registration starting. So we would like to get that launched ASAP.
And I think you're looking to start the season in January, is that correct?
Yeah, worst case scenario, if we had to, we typically start in mid-December.
December, okay.
Yep.
So, the jamboree kicks off the season?
Correct,
Okay.
yep.
I would say just to other board members, I think that I like the idea of expanding it, moving into including more towns. But if we don't have to make a decision in terms of the mask question, I would be in favor of saying yes to the program. I would wait another meeting to decide on the masks, but at the moment I would say I think we should mandate masks and say yes to other teams in other schools. And that would be also my opinion for the students in our school, not just the rec team.
So clarification, when you say mandate masks, are you talking about for the players on the floor?
I'm saying for everybody in the building, I guess what I mean is like in line with our school policy, the thing we just discussed for, ad infinitum.
Right.
The same policy would apply to all players, everybody in the building. And if that changes on January 1st or before then, as a board, then I'd be happy to talk about changing it for the players also. That makes sense.
Just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, players would have to wear masks while on the court and playing.
Like last year.
And that's just so you know, that's not the case right now. Like our volleyball team plays, when they're playing, they are not masked, but when they're on the sideline, they are masked.
Okay.
Just so you know.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Happy to think about it.
All right, so I think, why don't we break this into two questions? The first one is let's separate momentarily the mask question, unless we don't need to, but I feel like we're gonna get there. So we want to give Nick the go-ahead to use the facility for the basketball league.
Yes.
Okay, so is any emotional opinion we need to do with consensus?
I think given it would be cleaner to have it very clear in the minutes.
I will
with
make
a
a
motion.
motion that we allow Deerfield Parks and Recreation to use the DCS gym facility for their basketball program as outlined in the proposal provided to us with the issue of masking to be determined at the next school board meeting.
I'll second that.
All right. Any additional discussion? Nick, does that give you enough to get the ball rolling?
I think that does it. We'd like all the details, but at least we know we'll have a place to play, so we can start with that.
I think at the next meeting, if you're available to come back, and maybe we can have Chris come back at the same time. Kristen, would that be,
As the athletic director, you mean?
yes, Chris, the athletic director, to come back. He's got to put a different hat on.
Can I ask Nick just a quick question?
You can ask Nick anything you'd like.
Okay, Nick, can you tell me the age span of students that'll be involved in the program?
Good question. We typically open it up. We have kids as young as kindergarten, and we do open it up all the way up to 7th and 8th grade. traditionally, in the last couple of years, we haven't had 7th and 8th grade full teams. Last year when it was in-house, it was interesting. We did have a couple of 7th and 8th graders that did participate because they didn't need a full team to participate. So we did have that last year, but you can usually expect kindergarten up to 6th grade.
Okay, thanks.
Andy?
A question for Christian, if I could, the volleyball team, you said they're not wearing masks while they're playing.
Correct.
Are they only playing against, other residents of Deerfield?
No. It's a school sport team. so-
Regular season, regular other teams.
Yeah, but teams follow the guidelines that we have in place when they're here. And our team follows their guidelines as well.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, additional questions for Nick or comments from the board?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just, when we go to other schools, have there been schools that have required our players to be masked?
No.
Nick,
Okay.
that's a question for you, sir.
No, actually, that was a question for the.
Oh.
Volleyball. And then I looked to, Mrs. Stoncy, just for clarification.
Some of them don't even wear them in the bleachers, too.
All right, and then Andy?
So I just had a follow-up. Why are we approving only the use of the facility if it's currently being used in a manner or fashion that would have athletes not wearing masks, but spectators, visitors, coaches wearing masks? So I see that as the same as what's being presented to us now. So I would look to not wait until the next meeting to make a decision and just vote on it.
I think we are asking everyone else to be, not just we're deciding whether to wear masks on playing field, is that correct? Like when they're on the court, if they're off the court, they have to wear masks.
That is how it's stated in the email I got from Chris today. If the only people that won't be wearing masks are the players during the game and during warm-ups. And then the referees were also listed as open via his email.
So I certainly understand, it sounds like there's a desire to maybe address it all at once. I just wanted to, I guess, let Chris talk before we finalize that end of it, but still give Nick an opportunity to kind of get registrations and stuff rolling. But if you want to try to kill it all in one fell swoop?
Yeah, I look at it like it's probably not appropriate, but if we remove volleyball and insert basketball, the same procedures are going to be followed, so I don't understand what waiting is going to accomplish.
I think the only thing that made a difference in my mind is that most of our volleyball players are middle school players, and so they have the opportunity to be vaccinated, and the large majority of Parks and Rec kids will be younger players, and as of yet, they will not be. Maybe by the time they start up, maybe so.
Andy?
When did the vaccine become available to those middle schoolers that a majority of?
Beginning of summer or last spring.
And so do we know the percentage of that who have taken the vaccine?
I don't.
I think the other difference is that volleyball courts spread out feet apart each player, whereas basketball, you get me down in the post.
Nothing happens.
I'm gonna swap it out.
So it's a high contact sport in close proximity, so I'd like to hear Chris's just input.
I certainly hope that you can get a strong turnout. I enjoyed when I was coaching the rec teams, and obviously that was in a much more normal time, but it was something I used to spend a lot of time looking forward to, so hopefully try to get that going again. Is there any additional discussion regarding this? All right, all in favor? Aye. Andy or, aye, okay, that's unanimous. So Nick, that gives you the go ahead to get rocking. Next meeting in 2 weeks, which is on November, is it the 2nd? Third, I'm sorry, on November 3rd, if you could be here, and I will try to put this at the beginning of the agenda or towards the top of the agenda so that we don't suck up another one of your evenings. And we can talk to Chris at that time as well and give you a determination on the masks.
quick note on that, just before you go promising that, we had discussed previously having LaValle Brensinger give a presentation and do a forum on that November 3rd.
Well, they cost a lot more money.
For the first hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that's for the first hour, then that would be, 7 o'clock realistically.
Yeah.
So unless you want to hear about what we might be doing.
Yeah.
All right.
Appreciate the time, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Have a good night. Okay.
I noticed that we skipped the consent agenda items.
Oh, I thought we had to go to non-public first.
I don't think so. You have a leave request that wouldn't retire unless you needed to, and then you have transportation invoices.
So did everybody have a chance to review the leave request? Does anybody want to discuss it, or are we comfortable moving it?
I would mind discussing it.
They would like to discuss it.
Okay.
All right, and the
transportation.
transportation invoicing, which is buried in your packet. We have an invoice from STA.
I'll move to accept it.
I want the number. Thank
So
you.
13,194.40 to Dale.
So we have an invoice from STA in the amount of $13,194.40. That would be for the month of September, 4 buses at $164.93 per day each, for a total of 20 days. What is the wish of the board? I'm gonna
There's an invoice?
I'm gonna handle them individually.
Okay, yeah, just making sure.
Yep.
So that is the one dated 8 October?
Yes.
I'll move to accept that.
That is the one, yes.
And who seconded? Did anyone second?
I haven't had a second yet.
Oh, okay.
Second. Sure.
Who wants it?
Andy, I think.
I think Andy got it. All right. So, any additional discussion on that? And the date they started running the additional buses was this Monday. So billing should change for October, what was that? 18th? 18th. All right. All in favor of the DCS transportation invoicing amount of $13,194.40? Say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have an additional invoice for high school transportation. For the month of September, 1 bus at $344.25 a day on the 20 days. Brings us to $6,885. What's the wish of the board?
Not seeing it.
Scroll down.
Same file, okay.
Yep.
Figured you
Motion
had
to-
the laptop, should have figured that out, but.
What's the wish of the board?
Move to accept.
Move to-
Second.
Okay,
I'm sorry, can you just,
Gigi
I
seconded.
can't see that.
Nate moved, Gigi seconded.
Gigi.
All right,
Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. That takes care of STA.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Patty.
It's okay.
All right, that brings us to, ironically enough, the transportation update. Do you have anything else, Patty?
Do you wanna just update so everybody knows where we're at with the number of buses and?
We're at 6 buses. Amy Cron has joined the ranks of bus driver extraordinaire. And we have a new driver that transferred here from, I believe, from Raymond. So that gives us 6 buses. No more early morning drop-off, no more double run in the either morning or afternoon. And greatly appreciate people that offer good service coming early and leaving late. Right now, the only bus number that I have is Amy's bus. She told me that on red bus numbers, the morning run on Monday, she had 22 students, in the afternoon she had 23 students. So we're looking at a capacity of 55, right, or 53, without one weird seat in the back. Tuesday morning, she had 31 souls on her bus, and in the afternoon, it was 26, and then this morning, she was at 31 as well. So she definitely has some capacity on red bus. I would say that's the case for most of the buses that have pulled up. I would say we probably have about 30 or so kids getting off each bus every morning, getting on in the afternoon. So, I know Dale had asked for the week to be able to figure out their numbers and let them adjust. I have had probably 10 or so emails from families saying that they would like to transition their child back from car ridership to bus ridership. So I've been keeping track of those to let Dale know. And I'm happy to add anybody else that would like to transition from car to bus.
That was just my question. So you think that, you feel like those are still gonna be coming in, or do you feel like that maybe that anyone know whether that's the extent of how many cars can we remove from the front of the building?
Right, I'm surprised I haven't gotten more requests, but I'm happy to remind people that just because I need to know so that they can add the route and it will adjust the times and everything like that, so as soon as I have that information to Dale, from Dale, I will let the community know as well.
All right. So, any additional transportation items?
I feel like the current state is still temporary. We're losing a driver in the next few weeks. Is that still true?
Yes.
Do you know if Dale has another driver?
There is a driver in the training process. I'm not sure where that driver is in the training process, so we are losing one. Thought we were losing one last year too, and we didn't, so it's just so, hopefully they'll be able to get this other fellow up and running to replace the man that we think we're losing.
But it may be that in a couple weeks we're going back to 5 buses.
I hope not. Kelly was pretty confident that we would have someone ready to take that person's place, so barring any unforeseen circumstances, I think we're gonna be able to maintain 6.
Great, okay. And 6 seems to work, so.
For now, yeah.
For now, okay.
We really like a 7, but to really secure it.
And the high school is okay at 2 buses right now?
I've not heard anything otherwise, so I'm assuming so. Kelly's been really good about updating us, and she hasn't mentioned anything.
Perfect. All right, anything else regarding transportation? All right, that brings us to, we were gonna discuss the parking lot, but with that being said, I believe Kristen is gonna suggest we hold off on that.
Yep.
And I think Jeff might be able to provide a little bit of insight into that shortly. Okay. That brings us to our board reports. PTO, are you here, PTO? Who wants it? Anybody want it?
All right, yeah, we had a meeting last night. There's a catalog fundraiser out right now. We get credit if at least 50% of students sign up for online sales. So even if you're not gonna sell anything, sign your kid up for the online sales and they'll pay us for that.
Cool.
So we're gonna send a letter out or something to let parents know that too. Kind of mixing in 8th grade with it. 8th grade's gonna be selling concessions at the haunted stables this weekend and at Trunk or Treat to raise money for the trip that'll be happening. Scarecrow Contest is this weekend, right? Set up this weekend? Sorry, I don't have any notes in front of me. Yes. Scarecrow Contest this weekend. Set up your scarecrows this weekend. Students will vote on them in classes when they have time, when time allows during the day on a Monday. And the winner will be announced on Tuesday.
Yep.
Next week.
Pet contest.
We have a pet contest going on. Very cute pug has entered. As well as guinea pigs and mice and like all kinds of cute costumes. So sign your pets up, send in your pictures, and we'll be picking a winner for that. And the winner for that gets a gift certificate to the Deerfield Pet and Beauty store. So, cool. Yeah.
Any questions for the PTO? All right, thank you very much. And always, obviously, vote for the pub.
All right.
Don't forget the metal drive.
Oh, and we have a metal drive going on for the 8th grade. If anybody has any metal, you can either contact me or any of the 8th grade moms, and we're taking it over to Harding Metal, and they're paying us per pound.
Awesome. Perfect. Anything else? Thank you very much. Executive Board, Nate.
We didn't meet as an exec board, but we did meet as an SAU board for the preliminary look at the budget proposal. And we are making a final decision as an SAU board on that next Wednesday. And at the beginning of that meeting will be a public hearing. So if anybody would like to look at that, at the SAU budget proposed, and you can find it on the SAU website. And then come to the hearing. It'll be at Pepper Academy cafeteria, I assume?
Yep.
There'll be a public hearing there at 6 o'clock, I believe, before the meeting begins. That was it.
Excellent. All right. That brings us to Principal Witty.
Yes, this is my report for October. The camera. I don't want the camera on me, but I'm moving it away from you, Tina, and Kelly from the PTO. So this is from the last board meeting, October 7th to current day, October 20th. Soccer, volleyball, and cross country is still going on. They're wrapping up their seasons. Volleyball is the only one I have for the record because I spoke to Coach Radcliffe today. Their volleyball is currently standing 7 wins, 3 losses. So her goal was to win 4, and they've exceeded that. It's a pretty tight group right now. Even with those standings, they're still like 5th or 6th place. So they're still waiting for those numbers to settle in before that decision is made. Friday, right after the last board meeting, October 8th, we held our teacher workshop day. Teachers went into a rotation. We thank Jay Doherty and Lance Whitehead were here all day long. The architect, the teams met with the architects. I didn't share that, did I? I feel like this is new information for you, correct? I feel like I repeat myself a million times. So the teams met with architects, grade level teams, including paraprofessionals and case managers had their own special time to be able to join the team. And had about a 20-minute block of time to discuss what they would love to see at this school. Both Jay and Lance felt that the team were really positive, that a lot of the information came out of it. And in Jeff's update, they really did include a lot of the information that teachers had brought to the attention of the architects in their renderings that they brought forward today. In addition to that, we were able to clean out one of the pods. That's been our goal, is to try to get down to 1 if we have to. We'd love to get rid of all 3 of them. We definitely got rid of 1. So teachers went in and took care of that, and they had some team time as well. The next rotation on that day, big thank you to Lindsay Maxfield, who organized the social studies work the teams did together. They were firming up their essential questions as well as their units that they teach, and so they took a lot of time that day to work on that. And then big thank you to Michael Trump and Brooke Pretricelli, who did 3 different presentations on culturally responsive teaching. And with a technology twist. So they did a wonderful job. Tons of great feedback from the staff about that particular session as well. This past week, starting the week of the 12th, which was last Tuesday, we started back up the classroom in the homeroom of the week. Mr. Ferdinand's class, the 3rd graders, were the first classroom of the week, so I joined them throughout the course of the week. I do announcements on the first day, followed by morning meeting, and then we visit the class throughout the week, snack time, and we usually try to join a lesson of some sort, read a story to the kids. So every day, I did Mr. Ferdinand's class, and Mr. Green is doing Mrs. Luby's class this week. So that's, and you'll have to stay tuned for who's next week, because the big announcement is made on Monday when I walk in to do announcements. So that's been a lot of fun, getting back into the classrooms and seeing the kids and getting to know their routines. On Wednesday, the 13th, 4th grade visited Strawberry Bank. They had a wonderful field trip. This past PD Wednesday, we had our afternoon medleys. As you know, we're a CFG group. We have a Critical Friends group with a couple of Jess Sticky and Sarah Chase are the leaders of one of the group, and Greg Bover and Heather Swanson, I believe, is the other. Gigi would remember CFG pretty well, I'm sure. It's just a time for staff to get together and pose a problem and do some problem solving around strategies to fix that problem. So that was one of the groups that met. Another afternoon medley was a webinar, and there was some social studies planning going on. And it gave teachers time to dig into the culturally responsive workshop that had been done that previous Friday. So for afternoon medleys, just to remind you, teachers get to choose, they decide what the medleys are gonna be for the afternoon, and then they decide which one they wanna participate in. So we had teachers busy last Wednesday. Friday the 15th, our 7th grade advisors took a field trip to Demerit Solar Farm and did some apple picking and some advisory bonding experiences. And then 8th grade Bagley took a field trip to Hampton Beach and had a great day with each other. We got a ton of great reports from both field trips. And then on Friday the 15th, Jay and Lance were back here to do a visioning session with administration and some other staff members. Patty and Ryan and Lisa and I were in this group. We invited Brooke Petroselli because she had come with Patty and I to the Learning Environments for Tomorrow at Harvard a couple of years ago. So we brought her into the group. Kristen Davis and Jamie Oddly joined us as curriculum specialists. And the architects will be back to talk to some middle school representatives because the 7th and 8th grade was on a field trip that particular day. So they were not part of the group, but they certainly will be. And Barbara Cook stopped by for a quick visit and gave some feedback. This past Monday was a CRB meeting, and I know Gigi, I'll give that update in a moment. And then today was SAU leadership. We try to get together once a month with Chris Motika and Patty and Peter Warburton. Karen Gersha are usually there, and then all the principals, assistant principals, and special ed coordinators in the district get together to just go over different things. So a couple topics were discussed today, including a revisit to thoughtful classroom, where each town is, where each school is in that process. Chris Motika will be here tomorrow, and he also to meet with 8th grade, and he will be back on Monday to meet with 6th and 7th grade. This month's middle school focus is assessing the assessment rubric with a focus on authentic and engaging learners. The outcome is to assess a piece of work using the rubric and reflect on areas that we would like to grow and improve. And just for some information about upcoming events, this Saturday is the Cross Country New Hampshire Middle School State Invitational. And the next Friday is our first middle school dance in a long time. It will be Halloween themed, and we're doing it outside in the back. The 8th grade magnet that's planning it is very excited about it. We've been doing a lot of work. So, and just for a couple of, we had A Day on Thursday the 21st. So as you know, A Day is admin day. And so administrators try to meet with couple of different grade levels each at A Day. This particular day we met with kindergarten, 1st grade, 3rd grade, and our music teachers. So kindergarten is busy working away, learning their numbers, writing their numbers. They did a butterfly release. They only had 2 butterflies out of 42. So that was kind of disappointing, but they loved the release, so it all worked out. 1st grade will be going on a field trip to Squam Lake coming up. Our 3rd graders just finished a publishing party. And some updates on our music. CHS Jump Off Day, they usually have the band kids go to one of the football games so that they can see something that's how exciting, something to look forward to. Like could be you one day soon. And unfortunately it was canceled due to the dance. The dance was scheduled for the 1st day. So only a few students had shown up, had said that they would go, so they're going to try to do something different. But in May, there is a New Hampshire Music Festival that we're talking about letting our kids go to this year. The NHMEA put out a big survey to all the schools, like would you come if it was just your school, and a few, so we've responded to that, and we're just waiting to hear back from that. But in November also is the UNH Band Day for the where our kids can go and watch the Wildcat Marching Band and Wind Symphony. So we'll be bringing kids to that. We estimate probably about 40 kids or so attending that. So that will be on November 5th. And hopefully Mrs. Davis and Mr. Trong have given information about that. So that is my update on the principal update. I'll wait for you to announce the CRB in a moment. Yes, Nate?
Your comment about the Concord band, is an interesting one, and I would be curious if they, as in Concord High School, has made any efforts or contact through you to invite all of our, middle schoolers for sort of like a Deerfield night at football, something like that, or has it just been limited to the band? It sounds like.
Yeah, I think that Melissa does this. It's been going on for quite a few years. There were actually, this was the date she tried to avoid, but it was the only date that worked out for Concord, and in the end, it didn't work out for us. So, but I'm sure Melissa could provide more information about that if you're interested.
But if Melissa's doing it, then it sounds like it's a band thing. It's not a Concord High School to our students.
No, it's just a band thing. Thank you. Sorry to clarify.
No, thank you.
Additional questions for Principal Withy? All right, CRB, Ms. Clippa.
Yes, I was unable to zoom into the meeting. It was a Zoom meeting, so Principal Withy is going to update us.
Okay.
So I would like to welcome back Barbara Eves, is part of the group again this year. She was a community member that joined us last year. I think it's Colleen Preto is a community member that is joining us, and Jenny Wellington. She wasn't able to come to this particular meeting, but she's going to be the third community representative to join us. So we have, our next meeting will be in December. But this particular meeting, we just reviewed, Brooke Petroselli is our CRB rep. I think if I'm mistaken, I mentioned another Brooke, but it's Brooke Petroselli that is running the CRB. And so she, the review will have the end of last year's notes from the May meeting. Social studies, we reviewed that curriculum had been passed. Grade levels are currently working on documents that have everything at a glance, competencies, units of study, resources, etc. We did talk a little bit about world language. We do not have a teacher as of yet. We have not, we've had a few people that just have not worked out that have come, like I said, this is at this time of the school year, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and so you have teachers that can't get let out of contracts on one end, and so our sixth grade team has absorbed some of that time back into their core schedule, into their core classes. And some of our seventh and eighth grade students are participating in VLAX that they do during that study lab time. We are certainly welcome that for people to do that. The thing about VLAX is that parents have to sign their child up to participate. It's not we can provide the time in school, but it is not a school-based thing. We can't call VLAX and say, hey, we got, these kids want to join. It's a family involved activity. So if anybody is interested in doing that, we certainly welcome that. And in math is up for a revision this year. We're not expecting it to be a huge revision because a ton of work was done the last time that that curriculum came up. But they are up for a full revision this year as well as guidance. So those groups are working. We're going to make time for curriculum committee work at the school level, and then in the mid-year review, we have library, science, music, and technology. That won't involve the board, but just so you know that those are the four curriculums that are up for a mid-year process, revision, or review rather. So you'll be seeing math and guidance at the end of this particular school year, probably sometime in May. And I think that's everything. Our next meeting is in December. I have to look at the date specifically. Do you have that in Jen?
I was gonna say,
yeah.
That might be close to the holidays.
Yeah, I think December 13th. Our next meeting will be December 13th. And then February meeting was going to be earlier, February 7th. So we'll make sure we get those dates to you.
thank you.
All right. Any additional, CRB related questions? All right, thank you for the update. Mr. Kelly, what do you got on the building committee?
I've got an update. We met today. If I could quickly if the board is okay with it, could we quickly talk about the Candia School thing, because it keeps coming up, and I don't want it to distract us down the road when we go to get funding and for this to become an argument. And I can make a very clear explanation why Candia is not a viable option.
More comfortable with that?
Yep.
All right, I got it, Jeff.
All right, so we've got 2 modules out there with 4 classrooms each, 20 kids plus in each one of those. That's 80 plus students, right? We're a K through 8 school that is already overpopulated. So let's say where our goal was to only get rid of the modulars. We would need a K through 8 year commitment from 80 plus students to attend Candia in order to forecast and plan our 9-year look ahead. What happens if any of those kids decide to transfer? Let's never mind the fact that the Candia population could change. So we're trying to make a long-term decision for our school and our community based on the continued growth we've seen in it. Not knowing what's going to happen in Candia adds a wrench that we can't really predict or understand, especially if they continue to see development like they are. So 80 plus students, 9-year commitment, no ability to control the change in Candia population. We then have logistics of contract negotiations. We've got transportation. We have trouble getting our kids to school here, never mind to Candia. Know what happens if a kid wants to transfer out of Candia once they've been going there, constantly putting us in a state of limbo. So, while on its face value, yes, Candia could have some room and could potentially take some X amount of Deerfield students. But what family in town in Deerfield is going to say with their kindergartner, you know what, I live in this town, but I'm going to have them raised in a separate town in a separate social circle, right? So I just want to get that out of the way so that we can focus on building the addition and the expansion that we need in this town so that we can plan for our students and make sure we make the best steps. So hopefully that addresses your question. Don't want you to think I was ignoring you. We met today and we discussed where LaValle Brensinger are at with progress. They currently are wrapping up existing conditions review, which they will have over early next week to Chris Kofus to just go through and make sure that what they outlined for our existing conditions match up with what he perceives. And there aren't any issues that he's identified that are not on the existing conditions report. The following week, we will then have the engineer's report, which will deal with the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. The first report will be architectural and structural engineering. Chris will review those, and then those will be passed on to the committee. We are wrapping up, I should say we've wrapped up pretty much the information gathering session, as Ms. Withy alluded to. They had a visioning session with LaValle Brensinger last week, where they went over some very high-level conceptual ideas about how this school could best work for their staff. The feedback from the teachers was received via surveys and interviews. LaValle Brensinger's consolidated that. It's funny, kind of the high takeaways from the staff, things like more power in the classrooms, but a lot of talk around shared common areas for the classrooms and for the grade level pods. The meeting notes for the meeting with the visioning session with leadership are forthcoming. We should have those next week. We're now in the design stage. We saw 4 different designs today, which are not ready for public release, but again, very high level. Here's your building, here's what we could do to it, 4 different scenarios. Scenarios involve, as we've discussed, building onto the side, which is presented with an issue with the wetlands, building onto the front, which is actually a really kind of cool concept, would give us a neat atrium, building onto the parking lot. I think 2 of the different designs included building on the parking lot. So there's 3 designs basically here, 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 and then which was, all right, let's put an addition here, 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 and here around the building to kind of, 4 different little additions in option 4. So they're making good progress and are following the schedule that they have outlined to us. Our next goal is going to be for us as a committee is to get an RFP out for the construction manager. The committee is recommending, based on the advice of Valley Brensinger, that the form of contract we use for this project is construction management at risk. So that will allow them to hire, one of these larger construction companies that builds educational facilities at a very early stage, and give them the conceptual drawings, 30% design drawings that they can then come up with a guaranteed maximum price for. It's construction management at risk, so I have no idea what this is gonna cost, so this doesn't hold any water, but they say it's gonna cost $8 million. That's their guaranteed maximum price to us. We then work with them, LaValle Brensinger, so we work with the builder, the architect, and the engineers to basically value engineering that price down, but they're held to that maximum price. So, do we need the board's approval to, all right, so, the other option, just to put them both out there, was we could take the design drawings and they could sub it out to a construction estimating company, XYZ construction estimates, and they'll give them the 30% design drawings and they'll say, we think this is gonna cost $9 million, whatever. They're not held to that. There's no collaboration. It gets us a number, but it's not the form of, it's not the way they'd suggest we proceed with this. I would look for the board to allow us to issue an RFP for a construction manager with a guaranteed maximum, construction management at risk with a guaranteed maximum price contract.
So moved.
Second.
Over to you.
So is that from Gigi?
Yes. All right. Go ahead.
That was it.
All right, any additional questions for Jeff regarding that aspect?
What's the timeline? When does that expect to come back? And how many likely bidders would there be for this RFP? And what's the market? What are we looking at for the next phase?
So I can't speak to the market and the number of bidders, but they indicated to us that we're going to be on the smaller size. I don't want to publicly talk about any names that they threw out there, but if you Google, there's huge multi-million-dollar construction companies that focus on building educational facilities. We'll probably be on the smaller end of it, but
we're not building a high school, we're building an addition.
Yep.
Right, so it's not a whole campus, it's an auxiliary to what we already have, so it's a smaller project.
The way it will work is that they'll put together the RFP for us. They're gonna hold our hand through the process. Then we'll post it, in the newspapers, on constructionsummary.com, on all the bidding websites, so they'll all see it come across their desk. And then LaValle Brensinger will also reach out to construction companies that they've worked with in the past and say, hey, make sure you guys take a look at this. They're obviously not obligated to bid on it. But if your concern is, will we not have anyone bid on it, I would be shocked if that were to occur. And just so you know, the contract would be written in such a way that we're not obligated to use, if the bond doesn't pass, then we're not, obligated. We'd be paying them for this first half of the service, which is the pricing and collaboration.
I thought it was already last year's vote. We already have the money for that. Is that when you say the first half of this process, we're already paying for that, or?
Correct. We already have the money.
Yeah.
It would just be the contract that we're entering would be help us get to a bond vote. If the bond vote's approved, then you will be the construction manager.
Andy.
The next steps we're talking about are in alignment with best practices that LBA has followed on other, successful projects. Yep.
And then timeline, once the RFP goes out, do you think is it a 14-day? I don't know how long those tend to go out for. And then given that, and how long do our architects have to get the 30% ironed out to then provide to these people to be able to get this thing out of the warrant?
What they said to us today was that they were going to have the design drawings and pricing complete by January.
Okay.
So, we got to keep moving along, but.
Wait, that's LaValle Brensinger getting the 30% drawings, or that's the result of the RFP? Those drawings are already by January.
So they're both going to happen in tandem. So that's why we need to get the RFP out so that we need to issue an RFP next week.
Gotcha.
Get those results back in
Make a
2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever.
I see.
But we need to get moving here so that we can have them lined up and ready to go, so they can
And then
start
work
the.
together until January to make this.
Correct.
That's what you're saying. I got you.
Yep.
Work in parallel.
Okay, I missed that part.
Yep.
All right, so, we have a motion on the floor. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, what else you got for us, Jeff?
Okay, so that's that. The other things are, so LaValle Brensinger will be here, next, meeting, November 3rd. I would encourage, this happens every time, I would encourage the public to, attend. It's a great chance to provide input, on this project, and give them your feedback. We have a committee meeting at 4, then LaValle Brensinger will be meeting with the forum and us at 6, so we'll be able to ask any questions that you might have that I haven't been able to adequately answer. And then the only other thing is we need to start building kind of a grassroots marketing team. So if you know of anyone who wants to get involved, please reach out and let me know. And that's it.
Nick?
Is the next week's meeting, you say 2 weeks?
Yes, November 3rd.
Is that the last chance for the community to have input? Is there a time, do we keep going for the next couple months? Obviously, we don't want to be giving too much input at the last second, but is there a way where if a group misses the meeting next meeting, are they done?
So what we talked about today was we were going to host an in-person November 3rd and then a virtual November 10th. Based on the experience of the high school forums, we're going to see what kind of turnout we have at the November 3rd meeting and reception. You know, I would love if people want to reach out and, you know, get involved, but we do need to move rather quickly. And so I'd say, you know, we absolutely 100% want public comment, but it needs to be done in a quick and concise manner so that we can get this on the warrant article.
And Nate, we did let them know that we live stream our meetings and record them, so they were comfortable with that, so that if anyone couldn't make it to the meeting, they could still see the presentation, see the forum, and then you could email feedback as well.
Great, thank you. Sure.
All right, any additional questions for Jeff? All right, Nate, let's go into high school.
Not much to say, we're still working.
Is it feasible that we should talk about asking our superintendent for us to maybe, like we did in Concord, maybe it's time for us to say Co-Brown's probably the next one to.
I think that's a great idea. I think that while things are working sort of one direction, we shouldn't only be working in one direction. And so therefore, since we got a clear message from the community that choice and multiple options are something that a lot of people want, I agree with that. So I guess I would propose to the board, would it be okay for just a couple of us?
Well,
The two of you are the high school reps,
Is
so.
it feasible for the entire board to at least tour Co-Brown, like we did in Concord? Kind of have a conversation
I
with
think
them?
that's a separate
Is it?
issue. I mean, I think, yes, of course, board members can tour, but I think if you're talking about having a conversation, we need to set up a negotiations meeting or an initial conversation with the two of you and whoever they choose to participate. And then in conjunction with that, at any time, you can set up a tour and post it.
It's just sort of an informational
Initial conversation.
before negotiations, but it would still just be.
It would still be, you're having a meeting to
Related
talk
to
about
that.
high school options with their team.
Okay.
But the two of you as the designees would attend that.
All right, Andy?
I think it would serve the broader board the best if we gauged the interest or negotiation of these other schools prior to going and touring and talking with folks, because if nothing comes to fruition, then it might have been productive and we might have learned something, but I don't know.
All right.
So go for
If
it.
it's a good use of time for everybody. Very good.
Okay,
Yeah, gotcha.
so I guess we want to have Patty reach out to what's referred to as Co-Brown and see if you can schedule a
The
meeting.
others as well on your list or just Co-Brown?
Let's start with one.
Let's start with Co-Brown and then we'll continue working our way down the list.
Okay.
And we can schedule another meeting with Concord if you
Yep.
wanna add that to your ever-growing list of
Sure.
tasks. When I do it. All right. Anything else?
That's all I got.
All right. There won't be a whole lot until there's a lot. That brings us to policies. We have a number of policies on the agenda. Does the board want to start taking them up tonight? Andy?
I'd like to have a motion that the policies under first reading be pushed to our next meeting.
Second.
Okay, so that is a motion and a second to advance the first reading policies to our next meeting for first reading.
Correct.
Okay,
Oh, from
and,
first reading? Oh, okay.
yep, and so any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that's gonna bring us to two policies. We have policy GBD and IJO. Patty, if you'd like to talk with us about those.
IJO has been in your drive for a while, and it was the one that was labeled admin. That was the last submission of that policy that we had submitted to the board. And then I made some changes to one, and I don't think I brought it.
So, I'm sorry, just for clarification, I see 4 in the drive.
IJO is labeled at the top. It should say admin in red. And it's a red line copy.
Okay.
See it?
Yep.
So is it one back. All right, talk to us, Miss Patty.
We reviewed this with the board a while ago. We just haven't taken action on it. So unless there's questions, we went through the whole thing. I haven't made any changes since.
Okay,
I have a question.
go ahead.
No, let me give you a second to make sure I'm playing the right one. You got something first, go ahead.
No, that's,
All right. All right, what's the wish of the board on, policy GBD? We are referencing the,
are you skipping over the, you're gonna move on from that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think Nate was, had a question on IJO.
Yeah,
right?
I'm looking in the drive, maybe I'm not seeing the admin version of it.
So there is one in there that's listed as red line.
Yeah, is that the one that's admin? I don't see the word admin on it. Unless I
It's
open.
at the top of the policy, it says Oxnard in parentheses, and next to it, it says admin in red.
Okay, yes, that's the one I'm looking at.
all right, so we're addressing IJO at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we're out of order.
Yeah.
Go
Is anybody else looking at that right now?
Yes.
All right, at the bottom of the second to last paragraph, that's all red lined out, it says underlined, unsure whether or not this policy is an appropriate place for an evaluation tool, which is a statement I agree with, but is that wasn't part of the policy, right?
No, that would be, sorry, that should have been struck.
That should be struck
Yeah.
also, okay. But that last sentence there would be added? In order to foster strong partnerships?
I believe so.
That is intended.
Right, Kristen, that was part of it, yeah.
That is part of it,
Yep.
okay. I was just unsure which was, so that unsure statement should be going.
Yes, sorry, that should have been struck, yeah.
Gotcha. That was the only question I had. Other than that, I would be agreeing with this. I'll move this statement, IJOKA, School Family and Community Partnerships, Oxnard/admin, this particular version of it.
We have a
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the IJO Oxnard/admin edit. Any additional discussion?
I agree with the changes. I think that as we talked, this was a meeting months ago, I had brought some ideas here, and I think that after having thought about all that, I agree that this is not the policy to pick up these concerns. And this policy is more about partnerships with different groups in town. It's not so much about what I was trying to add in there, but there is another place for that, and I like that last statement there. I think that's broad enough. That gives latitude to solicit feedback when appropriate. But other than that, I think this is a good ending place for or current place for this policy.
Okay. Any additional discussion regarding IJO? slash there.
Just to be clear, so we're striking that last line after the, like, what's stricken, so
Yellow.
that whole thing's gonna be gone. Okay.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright, so that leaves us with GBD.
Sorry, I went out of alphabetical order on you.
That is fine.
So today I looked at the board at the meeting when we first brought this forward. We always present you with the school board association's most updated version, and then we compare it with the version that you already have. This last time this policy was approved was 1997, but there weren't a ton of changes compared to the school board association's version that I think was early 2000s. So I'm going to work from your policy because I thought there was an addition in your policy that made sense to keep. So I just handed out what I worked on today.
No, then can I have one last?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it didn't get into the drive. I just made a couple of really small changes. So under staff communications to the board, I struck where it said principals so that all communications or reports to the board or any board committee from principals, supervisors, teachers, or other staff members shall be submitted through the superintendent. It didn't make sense to say that something might come from the principal and go to the principal. So it's just to the superintendent. And then I struck the administrators shall inform each other of the communications. So we always make sure that all those communications get funneled to the board. And I make sure that it gets to you. The piece that I left, and I also struck from because it didn't make sense, but the piece that I left that I like, and as was mentioned earlier in this meeting, the addition that Deerfield has had for many years says, the necessary procedure shall not be construed as denying the right of any employee to appeal to the board administrative decisions on important matters, provided that the superintendent and principal shall have been notified of the forthcoming appeal and that it is processed in accordance with the board's policy on complaints and grievances. Staff members are also reminded that board meetings are public meetings. As such, they provide an excellent opportunity to observe at firsthand the board's deliberations on problems or staff concern. So I think it's fine to leave that because there is a mechanism for staff to file a complaint, and there always has to be, there's a chain of command and things should be addressed appropriately. They should go to Kristen first, and if they're still aggrieved, they come to me, and then if they're not satisfied with my answer, then they come to the board. And we also do have policies in place to protect employees for any type of, if there was harassment or something that would completely, if it was to do with Kristen, it would completely skip us and go right to, there's a Title IX officer, so all of those types of complaints are not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about,
I'm just curious, does it, I think in some of the other policies, there's like a footer and it like lists law and all sorts, and like when it was last revised and stuff like that.
This is a completely optional policy, so there's no, I don't think there's a statutory reference in this one at all.
So where I was going with that is, does it make sense if the board moves to approve this as amended and presented? I guess I'd be curious if the board would want to see a reference to the complaints and grievances policy or whatever, like whatever that
To direct them where they would go?
Yeah, and then whatever the title, like what those things are.
Yep, I can do that. I can do it for it doesn't have to be approved tonight, I can do that for next meeting if that's.
Yeah, I like that idea. So if we want to add the references to it and then review it at the next meeting, we can table it until the next meeting. If that's the wish of the board.
So moved.
Second.
Remember, the tables seem to be, yeah. All in favor of tabling to the next meeting?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, I'll add those and.
We didn't have any informational, correct?
No.
All right, so public comments for any public? Here's the comment, Mr. Verville, feel free to go ahead, sir.
Kevin Berger, McCarran Road. I want to apologize for snickering during your meeting, but the member's a little presumptuous as to what I was laughing at. And I don't appreciate being called out indirectly, as Mr. Oxnard has done in the past when he decided to twist my words around, or directly by a member. I'm a member of the public. If you don't like making the decisions, if you don't like the pushback from people that don't agree with your decisions, if you can't take that, step down.
You're defending
Okay?
yourself right now.
You're welcome.
You're defending yourself.
So
Hold on, Kevin, I'm gonna speak for a second. Please watch your tone. We're all neighbors. We don't need to yell at each other.
Then, Mr. Chair, I would ask that when one of your members calls me out by name in a public meeting, that they be immediately shut down as inappropriate
I'm gonna
remarks.
give you the opportunity to speak. Please use a civil tone.
My tone is civil. I'm requesting that I not be called out, not be referred to, and not be discussed in public meetings unless I'm invited to the table to participate in the discussion and defend myself. And it's not just for me, it's for any of these people that come out and spend the night out. Moving on. Mr. Oxnard, you can't be sued for choosing not to impose a mask mandate on children because the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services recommends one. As an elected official, you have qualified immunity, that if you are doing your job to the best of your ability and you do not violate state statute or federal statute, that you cannot be sued for doing your job and voting your conscience as a member of the school board. You should all know that. That's critically important to know if you're going to serve on an elected board. You have qualified immunity. This goes back to my earlier remarks relative to BAR1 and BAR2. It's your responsibility to understand the job you're elected to do, how to do it, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. You should know that you can't be sued as an elected official conducting official business. It's simply not allowed, all right? Many of you, I mean, you've been on this board almost 6 years. You should do your homework and find out what's inbounds and what's out. The last thing I'll go back to, what I hear, Member Kelly, on the Candia question is that you've decided to reject it based on assumptions that you've made, you've come to, but there's been no discussion with Candia. So we don't know that it's a 9-year outlook. We don't know what transportation would look like because we haven't bothered to talk to them. So while maybe that question is settled for you and off the table for you, I can assure you it is not off the table for other citizens in this community because there hasn't even been basic outreach to Candia to find out what may or may not be possible. For all I know, Candia would tell us to shut off. But if you don't pick up the phone and call them, you don't ask. They have a lot of space in that school. Anyway, thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Kevin. Additional comments?
I just want to clarify, I want to get clarification on why it's okay to get community input about the high schools, but when your community comes to you with a petition for a special meeting, that's not okay. That's not part of the realm of listening to your community. I mean, you can't even answer me. I can't, there's no community here.
So, what I'll tell you, Bobby, is we can email you the motion that was passed by the board in regards to the special meeting. The information referenced in the petition for the special meeting would put in place an illegal meeting. And the board cannot hold an illegal meeting based upon the language that was requested in your petition. And that is the board stance at this point.
Okay, and there was comments about Sununu being Republican and all this stuff, but Sununu also made masks optional in all public spaces. This is a public space. I hate to tell it to you, but this is a public space. So Sununu made it optional in all, Sununu, I'm really confused. Also, just to let you guys know, the people that you're listening to, you know, CDC, they just released today an update to their policy that even if you're vaccinated, you have to mask up. So you might just be pushing this for the rest of your life. And it's not your job to parent my children. It's not your job. There's no hate here. Like, I'm close friends with you guys. Like, I know some of your kids. Like, there's no hate. This is me being Mama Bear and saying, you don't have the right to mask my children. You don't have the right later down the road to say that children can't come to school if they're not vaccinated. You have no right to mandate health options and health beliefs on my children. So I just want you to wake up and just look at your community, please, and stop making decisions. Thank you.
Any additional comments?
Yeah, Cooper, Northrop. The fact that science evolves shouldn't be a surprise. That's kind of the point. You look at additional evidence, you weigh it, you make a determination. The fact that we don't necessarily agree with the science doesn't make the science invalid. As far as the board making decisions for the students, that's kind of the job. That's what you guys are here, you're making policies. And when we take out these hot button topics and pull the politics to the side, you do mandate the way health related decisions are made. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only parent that had to get 13 or so, whatever the number is. The number may not be accurate, but there was a large number of vaccines that were required for my children to attend. That's a health decision. When you ask our kids not to attend classes, not the board, but the school, when they're sick so that we don't pass around, that's a health decision. When we ask for kids not to bully other kids, that's a mental health decision. So when we say that we don't want the board involved in decision makings, I guess I don't know what you would be doing if not helping to dictate and set policy. And when we turn around and say, hey, the CDC updated their guidelines, great. That's kind of what we're supposed to do. This is a pandemic that we have not experienced in the past. So to go and base it off of historical information, we don't have that luxury. So we look at the current data set and we try to make informed decisions. Those informed decisions may change. Not long ago, we would recommend menthol cigarettes for pregnant women because it wasn't as bad. And then we decided that's probably not a good idea, right? So science is going to evolve, and in turn, so are the determinations made and the guidance made. And yes, it is your job as a board to try to take that information and set and dictate policy for the community.
Thank you. Any additional comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to be going into non-public per NH RSA 91A32 small letter C. Roll call. Jeff?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I need a motion to move on.
Make a motion to move into non-public.
Sorry, second. All in favor, Jeff?
Yep. Aye.
Juju?
Yep.
Yep. All right, it's unanimous. It is 9:09. We are going to non-public. Thank you folks for attending. Have a great evening. Good night.
Can you seconded that?
Andy.
Andy seconded.
Andy seconded.
Uh,
They did that.
okay.
Jeff and Andy.